If you look at science, for instance, a lot of science came out of the Arabian and the Persian cusp, and a lot of the development of that science came out of the Western European cusp, and a lot of the foot soldiering of all of that science came out of the African cusp. So in terms of the subdivisions of how the world functions, there is a hierarchy there that is along. Yes, yes, baby. Yeah, you get my meaning, BT.
Yes. So basically, you are saying, oh, he left. Oh, I hope he comes back. So basically, he's
No,
saying that.
yeah.
So it's saying that when we make excuses about, oh, we're not organized, we don't have A, B, C, or D. If you're smart, you're just smart. Regardless, you will solve the problem. So evidence is that if you look at, sorry to say, the African continent, our problem solving skills is like this is laughable, which suggests that perhaps we might not be as smart. But I was listening to Dyson the other day, the science talking about the broad spectrum of IQ. That Africa tends to have the end of both. So Africans will produce the tallest and the shortest, the smartest and the dumbest, and we tend to have that, across board. So how much of how much of each do we have is what the numbers are. Do we have more dumb people than smart people? And how much? Because my thing is, if you're the smartest in the room, even if it's 100 people in the room, you will find a way to dominate that space. So when we say we have individuals that are brilliant on the African soil, it begs the question: how smart are you really in a community when the dumb ones are the
Okay.
ones that over you?
So good point. And I believe I can answer that question.
Okay, go ahead.
Unfortunately, the world rules on under certain concepts. First, you got the sharp elbow, and then you got the sharp mind. In Africa, because of the culture, we value a sharp elbow even more than a sharp mind. Meaning the guy that can, rouse the biggest tribalism and get other people to help them fight you, are more powerful than those who can reason. Because here's the thing: if the culture isn't accepting reasoning as a viable dominance hierarchical riser attribute, then we value a sharp elbow, the person that can use the most violence or threat of violence to reach the highest level and echelons of our societies. So Africa really has to have a cultural revolution, or in the year 50 years from now, Africa will be projected to be the single largest group of humans on the planet. What that means is we will have such an excess amount of highly intelligent, high IQ individuals that we will now even have more geniuses than the rest of the world combined, just by the virtue of us having higher population. So either we wait for a higher population and boom, therefore the high IQ individuals will be able to coalesce, organize themselves, and create systems and structures. Or right now, we find a way to actually utilize the sharp elbow, we the high IQ Africans, in order to actually gain power. And this is what I believe people like
But
Gagami
but but but
is
that's
doing.
that kind of, that's my point. That if that was true, that would have already happened because the smart ones will have figured it out. The so-called IIQ Africans will have already done that. If they are the
Okay, so
smartest in the community, they
uh,
will have
so
done
so
that.
you're conflating smart and wisdom.
Okay, you can
Wisdom
introduce
is what
the
you're
word.
referring to now, which is slightly different,
No,
right?
no,
That's a
no. You can use different words, but I'm saying that this so-called idea that we're going to separate, like, oh, we have intelligent or smart. We use any word.
okay.
The evidence. Like, if you say you're that smart and you've some way somehow not figured out how to get to dominate the space or lead the so-called dumb ones, then how smart are you really? Now you want this population boom in the hopes that you
Okay.
will produce more smart people. But guess what? You will also produce more dumb people.
More dumb people. True.
So
True.
if you just do a mean average and you just scale it up, it will still be the same result.
Okay, so let me give context here. India's IQ is just as low as Africans, right? The average Indian's IQ is like 70. Africans' IQ is also quite low. However, they, because of the fact that they're a single administrative region, meaning it's a whole country with 1.3 billion people, as Africa is a whole continent with 1.3 billion people, and we have different administration regions. We have countries and governors. What I'm trying to say is, when you do have the ability to control a single administrative region, aka a high population, uh, the smart ones will naturally create a dominance hierarchy based on competence, as opposed to sharp elbows. Because, for example, Nigeria, I mean, it's not an accident Nigerians have the highest number of black millionaires and billionaires in the world, even though Nigeria is corrupt and dysfunctional at times. That is actually a simple, factorial of the numbers, right? The fact that Nigerians are the largest African group means that you will, again, it's other factors too. Nigerians are intelligent, because someone argue, why is Ethiopians not producing billionaires, right? There's literally almost no billionaires in Ethiopia apart from some mixed Arab Yemenis. So Nigeria has the IQ, and of course Nigeria also has the culture that is kind of developing towards capitalism. Now, if Nigeria just removed that sharp elbow aspect, it would allow there to be a national dominance hierarchy based on competence. And also, just one last point, BT, what you're referring to as smart, it really is wisdom. Wisdom is a different concept. Smart is really just ability to crunch numbers and think and analyze things. Wisdom is really putting in all the knowledge, information, understandings of the world into something that's producing value. I wouldn't say that necessarily Africans have high wisdom yet. We have high IQ Africans, but we don't have many wise Africans, unfortunately. Wisdom is an extra thing.
So the low IQ is ruling over the so-called high IQ. So how high is that IQ? Is the dumb, but that's my point. If your IQ is supposedly higher, then you some way somehow rule the dumb ones. That's just supposed to be the normal hierarchy, regardless of elbow or no elbow. But if you tell me you have a higher IQ, the evidence is not there that your IQ is high enough to somehow dominate the so-called low IQ. How come the low IQ is the one running short over you? How smart are you then? Sorry, how high IQ? Don't let me use the word smart, but you get my point. It's not.
I get your point. I get your point, but that's why you're refusing to sort of acknowledge the wisdom aspect. Wisdom really is a whole separate thing. I have wisdom. Well, I used to think I have wisdom. Wisdom is a whole thing that's been analyzed separately from IQ. IQ is just, okay, how fast can you think? How well can you think? Can you resolve mathematical, scientific, philosophical concepts or not? Wisdom is really then putting everything that you know and using it to your advantage. We don't have that many wise Africans yet, but we have high IQ Africans. What we need is wise Africans. Because think of it as BT, right? An African leader that steals is not necessarily low IQ. They're just maybe not that wise, because it's benefiting them to an extent. That couple $1 million is going to help them and their families. Yet, if they were wise and they were less corrupt, they would even benefit maybe fifth generation instead of just two generation.
And I would say, I would say they don't have an high IQ then, because IQ would say you can still steal the damn money and invest in the power sector and make money for that same generation for the rest of your life. IQ would say I can still steal that money and build manufacturing companies, and I will still make it's a win. IQ to me should be a win-win situation. You steal the money, you invest in your people, they get the jobs, you get the cash for your generations. Everybody wins. That is IQ to me. IQ is not stealing money and putting it in France. That is not IQ. That's low IQ.
Okay, I see your point. I definitely see where you're coming from. So the question then for you is this, right? Do you believe that Africa will ever stop itself from being the laughing stock of the major races? I'm not comparing us to like undiscovered Amazon tribes. I mean India, China, Russia, America, and Europe.
That would depend on your that depends on how much you bring in your diaspora, the successful diaspora. They are the ones to unlock Africa's potential. So is the more they come back home with those knowledge, not necessarily resources, but skill sets and understanding of how the world works, because they've been on both sides. They are the ones that I think will unlock the full potential of Africa. So if you see any African country that taps into its diaspora, the best of them, then you will see progress. That's what I think the solution is.
Okay, yeah, I agree. I agree. And yes, that's the solution. However, we do need African countries to stop these really predatory tax systems. For example, I mean, I've talked this about this many times, but I can use Kenya and oh, shout out, man, Masha Allah. Shout out to you. Thank you very much for the Ramadan Kareem, my Muslim Christian brother over there, Benoit, for $100 super chat. Appreciate you for supporting the show and keeping it real, man. I really do appreciate it. Again, any support I get on these platforms, I appreciate. So thank you very much, Benoit, for sponsoring the stream. MashaAllah. Shout out to Dwight Man, the superior Dwight Man over there, right? I respect money, right? So anyone who sends money is superior to me. But to to go back on your point, BT, is
Good.
right. To go back on your point is this, right? Africa, we have some what I've always talked about this low hanging fruits, right? Fruits that are hanging so low, I don't understand why we haven't picked it, right? An example of a low hanging fruit that we have in Africa is the very deleterious tax laws that we have. If okay, so I've tried to import things into Kenya. It didn't go very well. They tried to charge me 100% tax. At the end of the day, I just let things go because I was like, I'm not paying the same value of the product that I bought somewhere else. Okay, there's that. Then they just steal your product, right? Ethiopia is even worse. It's 400% tax on your car importation. Okay, great. I get it. They want to reduce the amount of dollars that leaves the country. Fine, but still, if you want to make Africa industrialized, and I'll use Ike as an example, right? Ike has started a farm in Ghana. He's processing palm trees into palm oil and packaging them. They're looking to FDA certification, etc., and importing it across African countries. They're sending me some to Kenya, Tanzania, etc. Right? He's actually setting up industrialization, right? Instead of having dusty African women step on palm nuts with their toes, dusty foot African toes, they're trying to use machines. But here's the issue: why the mother-loving African does it cost so much money to send products like machines into Africa from China or Turkey? Why are they making it so hard for the diasporans who want to reinvest and create a bigger economy from doing so? Why can't we have a very progressive tax system that understands that those who create businesses are literally gods and that they should be protected? This is why Ireland is richer than the UK. They have tax breaks for companies, right? We have literally countries that do tax havens. Why can't Africa understand this and allow diasporans to invest? It's not like these diasporans are just coming in and doing nothing, right? Why can't we do this? This is a low hanging fruit.
Yeah, I agree. Like, to make it for you to invest in housing, for you to invest in manufacturing, even in healthcare, there should be waivers. If you've practiced in the UK or the US or Canada for 10 plus years, there should be waivers for you to come back home and set up specialty hospitals. There are many things that they can do to make it easier for the diasporans who want to bring those investments back home. Because when they quote the stats in Nigeria, they'll say, oh, the diasporans send $25 billion back home. We do that's the average for Nigerians, right? That we send about $25 billion to Nigeria every year. And I say, government, if people are sending that amount of money back home to help with school fees, to help pay for somebody's weddings, to help pay for, that means they have more that they can invest, right? So if they're sending that amount of money for all those things, then they have about $100 billion they can put into investment every year in Nigeria. But you have to provide the avenue for them to invest. Open up the stock market where I can trade with dollars in the Nigerian stock market. You see my point?
Okay.
Then I want to play. There are things that they can do to help the situation. Make it easier for a Nigerian to come back home. Don't stop making 5-year passport. Make it 10 years. Just make it easier. Make it cheaper. Subsidize it or something. If I say Kaiser and if you're Nigerian now, you can go back to Nigeria for $40 as opposed to $700. You would go home more.
That's true.
You will go home more, but don't focus on the price that you will subsidize it. Think about how much they will invest when they come back home. So you
Yeah,
can partner, have your own carrier where you can fly. Look at what Airpeace did with the UK. Once they started flying into the UK, they crashed the price down. That was a local. Now imagine them doing that in the US or Canada or Japan or other places. Invest, make them a carrier, invest in them because the return on investment is way bigger than what you put it in as a country. Have more rail networks. We are only celebrating two lines in Lagos. Oh, that's wonderful. But Lagos at this point, you should be able to leave there without even driving a car. Imagine me want to go to Lagos. There's power, there's train networks, there's security. Yes, I want to go home and I would spend more time down there. So there are things that have to
yeah.
attract the diasporans back home that the government has to put in place for the money to flow back in. That's what they're not getting.
But don't you think that the issue now is that when diasporans come back, they don't take them seriously?
Well, it depends on when I discuss diaspora, I'm talking about the successful ones. Because the ones
Okay.
that are really successful, you hardly see. I know some of them. You hardly see them online. They hardly talk. They don't. You wouldn't even unless you know them personally. You can tell. They even invest in other countries.
Hmm.
Look at what's the name of this guy Ogunlesi. You know the Nigerian man that was running Gatwick at the airport in the UK at some point. You know who he is?
I'm not too sure.
So he was in charge of the airport in the UK. But this guy is close to a billionaire, right? He
Oh,
partners
the
with
Yoruba
Black.
guy.
It's from my state. He partners with
He
BlackRock.
actually owns Gatwick, not running,
Okay,
and
okay.
he's actually a
Yeah,
multi-billionaire. He
yeah, I know
recently
the guy.
sold an enterprise to BlackRock,
Mm.
and which he made about what $7 billion from.
But what am I? Do you know what's shocking? This guy has no single portfolio in Nigeria, zero. And my governor cannot even think. Wait a minute, I have a billionaire from my state here. I have all this. I have all these resources. Wait a minute, you from my part of the state. What's going on? What can you do?
Yeah, but your governor is romancing him at the moment. We've seen images of your governor trying to romance him to bring
Eh,
some
but
of these other things.
an investor of that caliber does his own research. So even if you talk a good game to a billionaire, right, Kaiserian, trust me, he's done his own research. So if you're a governor or a senator or whatever, and you talk a good game, he's gonna do his own research.
Right, of
And
course, that's true.
if he's not matching up to what you're saying, he's not gonna invest. That's the way these people think. It's not what you say, it's what they actually can prove. It's investing money here. So, but you have many of them like that, Kaiserian, that are Nigerians in diaspora, billionaires, millionaires that have no single portfolio in Nigeria, all over the place.
Yeah, okay. I see your point. I see your point. But then now here's the issue with the Nigerian billionaires and rich people, not just Nigerian but African in general. We don't have a single well, we don't have any. Okay, we don't have many collections of rich or successful entrepreneurs in Africa. All our rich men and women do again basic, simple commodities: sugar, coffee, oil and gas. We do things that we're guaranteed money. None of our rich guys is out here investing in anything that's sort of risky, entrepreneurship, in tech or anything like that. We all invest in the same products that we know will get our money back. None of us are doing actual Elon Musk type stuff. And I'm not talking about the fact that it's big. I'm talking about risky things that you're not guaranteed your money
I
back.
mean,
We
Dangote
don't have.
refinery is risky, right? That's a risky move.
Okay, true. Yeah, that's true.
That's a capital intensive move. But what other fields are you thinking will be I
Like tech.
reward? Example?
I want to. I want tech. For example, okay. If you look at Flutterwave, right? Flutterwave is a successful company because it literally helps diasporans in the West get their money back in dollars and euros instead of leaving it in the African currency. So it actually creates more foreign direct investment, because people now feel that they'll get their money back to the investors and allow the companies to grow. However, Flutterwave is still serving a need. Again, I'm not against these companies. I'm just saying we don't have real risk companies that's okay. What Black Africans who are who are rich or successful investing in drug companies, investing in medicine companies, research, investing in technology, not participating in technology like fintech. I mean, like investing in I don't know, like OpenAI or companies that are similar. These companies are at the edge of discovery. We have none. Like, at least I don't know any of them that are doing it.
Oh, so you also, if I get you right, you want
Go ahead.
like something from Africa that would change the course of history, something that big, that would say, okay, this is from Nigeria or from Kenya, that is just like a Ford revolution or like a Tesla revolution in the early days, where this is tech coming from Africa. It's never been seen before. This is the very first, and it's going to change the way people live their lives, like Microsoft has done, like Tesla is doing.
Yeah, like
That level
like
of evolution okay, I see your point now.
yeah, they don't even have to succeed in it completely. They just have to be there, visible, to allow other people to say, okay, I don't have to just invest in oil, gas, food, and things that I understand how the market works. For example, what I really like now is African companies that focus on cryptology, right? To start creating crypto based programs that will solve African issues in relating to corruption, using NFTs and all these things. Yes, there's a Nigerian company doing it. I'm also trying to do it with some of the investors, but I want these things to be like normalized, that you can invest in things that are cutting edge as opposed to only investing money on things that you're assured a return. I want Africans to have more of a risk aspect, because here's the thing: if any of these companies actually blow up, you get exponential increase in money, all the other stuff that comes with it. It's no longer incremental.
Can I surprise you with one thing about Nigerians? I don't know about Kenyans.
Yeah, go ahead.
It only takes one person to do it and be successful, and everybody will jump on the bandwagon. So Nigerians is a mindset thing. Like we want somebody to take the risk first, and when it works,
Right.
then everybody, oh, okay, let's start doing this. So it takes just one person to do it. Once one person does it and is successful, trust me, Nigerians will just pile on, and you have that boom that we all want. But it takes just one person to start it off.
Right.
That's the Nigerian mindset. You go take the risk first, and if you succeed, then I'll come in. So that is just, we don't like taking risks, like you rightly said. So,
No, that does make sense. So yeah, for me, when I see that, when I start seeing like Africans taking risks, investing in companies that will lead to this exponential growth and development, I'm going to be so much more positive about the whole Afrofuturism, because I'm seeing things that are directly related to the change that we're looking for. Yeah, again, I'm not against incremental commodity based, investment. Everything has a point and a plan. However, I do want to see more of this exponential stuff going on.
so even for areas that you would consider a safe bet, because I know you were talking about the where Irish reward sectors, even though the areas that you would consider as like agriculture, I don't think we have even fully maximized anything like the potential of what we can benefit from that. We've not even tapped into that fully yet. So even you jump into that, which is wonderful. But even the ones that we know, okay, I can predict the amount I can make in this. It's an open market. I can sell. We have not even tapped into that fully. So it's Ike, are you there? You wanted to say something? I just saw you come up. Is Ike there? Hey, Ike, what's up, man? Can anybody hear my Ike speak?
No, he's in Ghana. Maybe in
Oh, Ghana. Okay, all right. Yeah, but that's my point. Like I see your point, but there's just I'm excited about agriculture. For me, I mean that's something in an area where I think we'll finally crack the code in Nigeria, and let's see how it goes. And but I do see your point that we need to dream bigger, think bigger, uh, and also bringing down diasporans like Ike with his millions of dollars, and Kaisorian with his billions. Even though he's in Zimbabwe with dollars, we can bring him in.
Hey, trillions in Zimbabwean dollars.
We can bring that in, and it's a lot. And the world is focused on Africa right now. I think were you the one playing the video of this white guy that became a Nigerian citizen? Is that you? I think I saw that video today. People are really excited to become Nigerian. Like, oh my goodness, things have really changed for the better. So yeah, so there's a lot coming up in the continent. So uh, well, let's see how it goes.
Can you guys hear me
Okay.
now?
Yes, finally. Hey, what's up, man? How you doing?
Chilling, chilling, chilling. Yes, I'm in Ghana, and as you may know, West Africa is having some internet issues with some
Nigeria is
people.
fine, by the way. Glow is working in Nigeria. He's always Ghana with the problems. No,
It's always.
shades, no shades, no shades, no shades, no shade. I couldn't help myself. I'm a Nigerian. I have to try to do it, right?
Yeah, and apparently, well, I'm learning a few things. For example, I think Starlink is illegal in Ghana. For example, Starlink meaning Elon Musk's satellite internet company, right? And at this current time as well, there's a particular company that and it's kind of government affiliated or deeply owned by people in the state that they're now trying to force people to buy. In other words, repairing this issue is now being seized as a political opportunity or as an opportunity to try to funnel people into a different path, right? In terms of the internet service that they use in Ghana. At least that's what I'm hearing and whatnot, right? So it's interesting, but yeah, I was just I'm working and I heard you guys and I figured maybe this might be a good distraction and whatnot. One thing that I wanted to perhaps add when you were talking about the billionaire that refuses to invest in Nigeria, and you mentioned that yes, these kinds of people will do their own research. In other words, they have good reason not to go there. Um, Now, I'm nowhere near as sophisticated as that guy, but there's also a reason why I'm not starting off in Nigeria either. But there is a sense typically that when there is an excess of elites, and excess elite meaning too many than the system can currently support, and these elites will be people whom, for whatever reason, either through entitlement or in education or class, feel like they deserve to be in the ruling class, but somehow they're not, right? And I don't know if that's making sense to you, BT. That this tends to be not a good environment. That environment typically does not encourage investors, right? And and it's a chicken or the egg issue. It doesn't really matter, and we can go deep into the analysis. But basically, you can have several ways in which this comes about. In the United States, there's also this thing going on right now, whereby the proliferation of elites, in terms of, let's say, in the managerial class, for example, where, for example, Elon Musk can buy Twitter and just kind of get rid of 85% of the people. Like, so who are those people? What were they doing, right? So they represent the excess elites, people whom you know are overeducated and they were promised as a result of their education and class such and such a particular kind of life and position, but in reality the system cannot support that, right? Like Twitter did not need those people, okay? And it's same with the deep state doesn't need those people and such and such and such. Hence, and one of the indicators that you're in a situation like this is that the society starts getting heavily indebted, right? It happens over and over again. It's one of those things that happens in history. Now, in Nigeria, for sure, and I'm asking you this, Babati, would you say that this is the case? In other words, the system definitely cannot support. We know that there's a big divide between the upper and then it just falls off a cliff down to like the lower classes. But amongst the people right now that are suffering or struggling, is a huge cohort of people whom feel like it's their birthright through education, again, class, family, blah, 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 right? That they should be in a better position, but they're just not, right? And that kind of a situation tends to be one where, um, so people are not looking to invite you over to, let's say, try something or start something, because even them are not able to, make way in the system. The structural aspects of the system that make it such that the system cannot support it, as I said, we can leave that up to the side. But do you get the sense that there is this excess elite problem in Nigeria as well?
Yeah, I mean, I agree partly with that because it's a very heavily subsidized country, and to the point you made about people feeling entitled to the need, I get that point. So how do you go about solving that problem though? Because you referenced Twitter that had to shed staff because they were not really needed, but they had the titles, they had this glorified titles. But in Nigerian context, how do you go solving that problem? That where you would the way you would increase efficiency, right? To use the lack of a better word, efficiency, that would attract a billionaire to say, you know what, I see progress here and I want to invest. But how do you go about it as a government and as a private individual? Just your response. I really want your take on that. How do you go about it to make that happen? Using the same
Now,
Twitter reference you brought up.
correct. Now, unfortunately, overall, okay, I'm going to give like the big picture kind of a view. And this view looks at cycles in history. And it says that one of the indicators of this, of the end of a particular era is when you have this excess elite problem. And what tends to then happen is a fracture amongst the elites. Let's say in the United States, you talk about the red versus the blue. Things get too overheated. You have the Texas boys with their oil, and then you have the ESG, diversity and inclusion, Davos type elite. Very different types of elites, right? And perhaps the Davos crew being represented more in the Twitter. You have a divide in the elite, and one has to then rise above the other, and this typically means war. Now, historically at least, right? But it is a disintegration of some sort. In other words, one side of, and I don't know how the divide actually occurs in Nigeria, right? But if you take the Elon Musk, so again, just for purpose of being neat here, I've mentioned the cycles of history point of view, and that when this excess elites, when you have the situation of excess elites, it only resolves itself by a chasm, not chasm, this is the other word I'm looking for, but there's a divide between these elites, and then they have to hash it out, and one comes above the other. And obviously, there is one. The elites have to recruit the people on their side, right? So it's not just an elite thing, but it's usually spearheaded by the elites. So these guys that are entitled feel like, you know what the hell is going on? I'm a white man in America, and all of a sudden I'm in the class of the deplorables, and to hell with this, and it's over. With regards to the Twitter aspect, what we're seeing is the return of the monarch, right? The return of the king, if you will. It's a return of entrepreneurial capital, the return of the guy who has a lot of control, right? As opposed to what you would call the managerial class, the managerial elite, the kind of consensus-seeking elite. Now, there's nothing wrong with the managerial consensus-seeking elite. It's a function of success, as a matter of fact. When you get successful and the organization gets large and complex, you're going to have this proliferation of this middle management / upper management, people who have control, but are not necessarily of the same stock or the same mindset whatsoever as the king, the monarch, the barbarian that starts companies, right? So what Elon represents is the class of entrepreneurial capital monarch coming in, chopping off heads.
But if you, since you don't have any problem with either one, but if you had to choose, which one would you prefer? Which one is more better for
Okay.
those than opium?
Let me at least say three things. Number one, there's a personality aspect. In other words, that there's just going to be a personality type, that style that you prefer, right? And that's going to be just who you are. Uh, Secondly, there's what you might say, well, what's necessary in a particular historical point in time, right? Well, there's a third aspect, but let's start with those first two. And in those first two, I land in the same place. um, Personality wise, I prefer the monarch, prefer the entrepreneurial capital, because I am that type of I have that type of personality, more risk seeking. Don't really, not a big fan of consensus, not a big fan of rules, and being particularly reverent to things, and being a sheep, right? It just doesn't I don't like that kind of thing, right? So that's the personality side of things. And also, I think that in this particular time in history, there is a overproliferation of that middle managerial class, bureaucracy, whatever it may be. We see it in government, we see it in academia, and we see it in places like Twitter, even places like Google, even Facebook cut like close to 50%, right? So it is an indication that this time in history, we need to shed that off. They need to go, that class of people need to figure out how they're going to go refine their power base. Amongst that class of people are going to come out some new entrepreneurs, right? Let's say, for example, in Google has been hoarding employees, right, to kind of keep competition at bay. So in the whole time of zero interest policy, zero interest rates, and lots of money, and Google has more money than God, anyways, even up to now, they've just kind of hoovered up all the engineers and whatnot, and just paid them gobs of money. Google spends like $162 million on food. think about that. Food, right? In terms of like their cafeteria and stuff like that, it is like they have the top class steakhouses in their cafeteria, and it's free, right? But point being, they were doing that to keep all these people kind of cushioned, right? So out of that will come new entrepreneurs, right, whom have been given golden handcuffs to stay stuck at Google so that they don't compete, right? So one of the kind of dominoes that will fall is new monarchs, new kings, new entrepreneurial people coming up. So both on the side of personality and the side of what is needed right now in history, I would pick this. Now, the third aspect has to do with some kind of supreme judgment, but of who's the better man, who's the higher type of man.
So
And I don't think that's necessary.
they get to go at it and see who survives the least, and that's the third version, right? The fight it out.
Yes, that is typically how it works. And this kind of clash of the elites type stuff. And you can see, for example, what the kind of crazy the rebuff of Elon Musk, right? You would think Elon Musk killed somebody, or or shot on the table in their daughter's wedding, right? And this guy didn't really do anything. Right? He just bought Twitter, and he just kind of says things that you're not supposed to say, because in this cathedral, this cathedral of the elites, you're not supposed to say certain kinds of things. You're supposed to agree with the general consensus, or at least pay lip service to it. So when they start calling him some kind of Nazi, hyper conservative stuff, which doesn't make any sense at all, right? He's just seems like a regular middle of the road, practical type of person. It shows the divide there between these two, and they need to the chasm, or this particular schism is what I'm looking for, needs to be more clearly defined, and let both sides rally their troops, and let's see who actually wins. Is it going to be, if you go in terms of electoral politics, is it going to be the MAGA, or let's just call them populists, because you could even be coming from a Bernie Sanders side of things, or is it going to be quote unquote the deep state, right? In terms of in the capitalist world, is it going to be this entrepreneurial capitalists whom have a view of how things should be, which is the individual iconoclastic view, or is it just going to be these people, this kind of gray, bland mass of middle managers whom just kind of repeat from the same hymnal, the same kind of platitudes, right? So anyway.
But in terms of the oligarchy, that because you were talking about the business sector, using Twitter and Elon Musk, I think he also wants political influence as it grows bigger. So it permeates through the political space. So it's not like he's just doing it for money or business only. I think you get to a point in that space where money does not really matter anymore. Influence and power takes over your ego. You just want to shape the society the way you think it should be. So that political influence, he wants to have it. He wants, so it's clearly choosing the side. Clearly, you know what he's choosing the side. He's not playing it safe like, oh, I'm rich, I have billions. So no, he doesn't give a damn. I've chosen the side and I'm gonna ride with it. So my
Yes,
concern
yes, yes,
is
yes,
that
yes.
they might end up being worse. Well, because if that's in the business sense, I don't mind it. But when you start clamoring or trying to champ, if it's that's seeking political power, then it bothers me personally because now you're going into different territory. People have
Was
different.
in the land of the free and the home of the brave, and this is in a supposed democracy, which it
So
really isn't.
it can't do it.
What
It's just, yeah,
somebody should not seek political
no,
power.
no, I'm not saying this. You should not. They've always done that. Look at what's the name of our former Fed chairman that years ago was talking about. Oh, we should regulate TikTok, blah blah blah. And this idiot comes out 2 weeks ago talking about, well, it should be sold to an American company and I should buy it. I'm like, wait a minute. So you've been eyeing TikTok for this long. So I get that. I get that. It's just like this the ulterior motive that they never speak up at the early stages of what they talk about. It's like, oh, I want A, but in the back of their mind they really want B. But they would just
Yeah.
string
So
you along for so long and oh, you want B all along. So it's that political game. They all want that influence because it does more for their business in the long run, right? But I think Elon Musk, in my opinion, is not about influence to make more money. I think he just wants to reshape the society in the way he thinks it should be because he is very big on this so-called freedom of speech, this so-called invasion of our laws by the left that he thinks he wants to reverse back to what he considers conservative. So if he's really going for those social values and social norms, to him, I think it's not about money anymore. Just my own
I
observation.
agree. It is true, right? With regards to the things that he says, I don't even believe the things that he says, such as the free speech thing. I think it's convenient to say that, right? And also it's convenient in a number of ways. In other words, it's convenient in the typical way of maybe you're covering your ulterior motives, but it's also so easy given the f ups of the of this other class I was talking about to say that you're for free speech, right? Because they so fumbled that thing up, right? They are so into policing things that you can just simply come if you're on the other side, and who knows what your real motives are. And you just say, hey, I'm against those guys because I'm for free speech, right? So it's very easy for him to say that. However, I think that for someone like him, he has ideas and visions. I don't really think they necessarily have to do with even, saving humanity or anything like that. But he just wants to make the world in his image. And he believes, and this is also seen in the way in which he sets up his companies. He sets up in companies in a way whereby it's easy to push him out if the consensus actually did build up to do that, as opposed to people like Zuckerberg whom have special voting rights and special shares, magic shares, like you can't touch them really. But he says, I'm going to perform, right? I'm going to make things happen, and when I make things happen, then that's how I'm going to retain my value, right? So in the aspect of actual practical good, if you take people at their word, let's say electrification, you can have this whole class of people talking about electrification till they're blue in the face and they make certain silly mistakes, especially given the fact that they're mainly bureaucratic and heavily focused on process, right? And they don't actually do as much as, let's say, a Tesla has done with regards to electrification. The merits of electrification aside, right? And whether or not the electricity comes from coal and we're not talking about that. We're just judging them based on the things that they have said, right? So I find that the monarch types, it's very clear as to what they're performing, what they can do, as opposed to the types whom kind of blend into a blob of orthodoxy, right? Where it then becomes this, oh, how can you say that this is right or this is wrong? And the actual output of what they're doing, how do you actually measure that this ESG is good for the world, right? It's hard to tell, right? You can't even judge. You can't even say yes or no, right? But
Yeah.
both of them are definitely after power.
So much of what is sold to the public, this rich versus poor, like the rich people. But in the back to Nigeria, like so, the managerial class, the way you put it, are the ones running things. Like, and we made a reference of Ogunlesi. I hope you know where he is. That owns the Gatwick Airport. I will mention his name earlier. What? Because the Nigerian politics is kind of different, obviously, and I wish people like that had influence. If the oligarchy part, I would take that in Nigeria. If that would work for us, damn it, because the managerial one have not been effective so far, in my opinion. So, how what can
Why don't you let's I'll answer your question, even though you haven't asked it yet. But why don't you answer your question and then ask your question, right? Answer the question you asked me, like of these two classes,
right?
whether from your personality point of view or as person, specific historical exigencies. What do you kind of prefer?
And they cannot coexist, right?
No. Oh wait.
It,
I
it,
don't think. I don't think that's necessary. That no. I don't. Well, maybe. Okay, maybe we should hash it out. Maybe we should actually say this point. No, they necessarily have to, like these. The dark side of the mountain and the light side of the mountain, both sides of the coin. All these things always exist. It's just a question of there's a periodicity to it. In other words, and you start off at a particular place. Okay, let's say we want to just look at this kind of a thing of entrepreneurial versus blah blah blah. Some entrepreneur comes in, or is Genghis Khan. He comes in, he conquers, he creates something, right? And at some point, as the thing expands, it needs to become more administered, right? So you need to then bring in a different kind of people, right? And then after a while, that runs its course where it becomes too much, and then it cracks, and then you have to start again with a new Genghis Khan, right? So,
yeah.
But the whole time, there is no getting rid of one side. But go ahead.
It's just like the different level of the level of interest. Like one just has one is just more powerful than the other. So it's like maybe a 30-70 kind of thing, because the pendulum will always swing. Because I don't think if you have them like the way you describe them, that there will always be this momentum swing between both sides, where at some point it will go to the other side. But for our own level of development, I think the oligarchy, I think they are needed right now on the African continent. So the pendulum hopefully swings towards them. That's that's the way I will best put it. Maybe after they're done making their runs or whatever, or down the line, you can have a swing back to the other side. But for Africa to grow, or Nigeria in this context, I think they will do a better job, because they are willing to take that risk, like you described. They're willing to, they're risk taker, and they're more efficient at it. They're willing to shed the dead weight, right? So they focus more on productivity and efficiency to achieve their goals, not because you have a title or you have become some goddamn degree that they don't give a damn about. How creative are you? How much can you produce or best achieve my dreams? So that is what we need on the African soil. So I would say
yes.
that would be
Okay.
the better push.
Kaizo, are you there? Or you taking a vacation?
Kaiser's
I'm here.
some girl somewhere, you know how. Yeah. but Kaiser, but you see the point he's making here, like, because you were asking me about the so-called IQ individuals and not being able to control that space. It's if we have them, can they just find a way to figure it out, or we have to hope that just happens magically somewhere? How does that happen?
Okay, yeah. I don't know. I think ultimately, honestly, I think we're gonna have to kind of rely on some aspects of chaos to be able to actually reach what we need. Because as for example, let's say Chuk was mentioning on the chat, not that one, the twilight of the elites. Let the elites with the sharp elbows win. I think this is where the juxtaposition happens, because you were arguing earlier, BT, that truly a high IQ person should have also access to a sharp elbow. And yeah, I see
No,
if you
no,
want
no,
to,
no, no, not that they should have that, but they should be smart enough to manipulate or to control the sharp elbow. That's what makes you smart, right? The brain controls the muscles, not the other way around. So if you have that high brain power, like you claim, you find a way to control those with lower IQs. That's
yes, I agree. I agree.
hierarchy of
You
knowledge,
do.
hierarchy of wisdom. So yeah, that's what I was
Yeah.
hoping for. In.
No, I agree. From a practical perspective, yes, 100%. The hierarchy should figure out how to recreate the competence hierarchy. I think I was just arguing from why it is the way it is, from a more like truth perspective. But ultimately, I don't know. It's gonna have to be like some kind of revolution, cultural revolution. We're gonna need something similar to the Renaissance that happened in Europe in I don't know, 1700s or whenever it took place. It has to be a huge cultural revolution where people start to recreate an African culture that moves forward. And I've always sort of disagreed with the idea that culture is important, but ultimately is, right. There's no such thing as IQ. I think Tankibo was one that made me realize that the only reason why Europeans are better than us is because they have a culture that prioritizes intelligence. It's within their culture, right? That means even the idiots value something to do with being intelligent. So, meaning the systems that they create and everything that comes from it has that essence of intelligence in it, intelligent design in it. So, yeah, I think Africa will need to go through a sharp elbow versus sharp mind, perhaps become Machiavelli in its sort of inflection. Right now, unfortunately, what I see is we have too many of these hoteps in Africa, right? Which are, I think, controlling way too much space in all these, abstractions. And I mean it from a very practical sense as well, not just talking. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think that's
but yeah. So because I mentioned I was making reference to a billionaire from my state that owned the Gagli airport and refused to invest, and I think I could categorize him as an oligarch that doesn't want to maybe compete with the managerial class, the way you put it, and
Mhm.
maybe there's an opening where the managerial class will say, you know what, let's give this a chance in this space where we'll let you do your thing, which eventually, if they give him control or I'll give him access, it would not only dominate this space, but it will also threaten their own dominance in some other areas. And there will be this clash between both sides because like an investor of that class will do. If he invests in something and is very successful, his friends will also want to invest in something close to it in that same area, right? Oh, you're making money over there. What's going on? They will show interest. And the more he brings his own friends that I are referring to as oligarchs in, the more influence they're going to gain in that space. And over time, there's going to be a confrontation between them and the managerial class. So I
Yeah.
think we just have to wait for the build up for that to happen over time and then see what goes on. Because that class might be productive or destructive, you know? Billionaires good at
Uh,
Yeah.
it. So I go ahead, sorry.
no, you're very correct, right? You mentioned earlier that Nigerians are going to wait for somebody to do something before they go in, right?
Right. You do, yeah.
Now, it's also true that people, um, you could take the Japanese, for example, let's say, people say they're a warrior nation, they would never give up. But once the people, right, are defeated, um, they will completely or immediately, quicker than you imagine, succumb to the new power. Basically, saying that it is power that matters. There's this weird thing about people talking about, a particular type of people that would never. It's like, no, it's about the ruling structure. Once they see the ruling structure has changed, they'll immediately change. And this is also true of a lot of the managerial class, uh, managerial elite. If some new oligarch like our Gatwick friend comes in, for example, and does his thing, right, and takes and seizes and this and that, before you know it, a lot of these people will just shift over and start singing a new tune, which is also akin to what you talked about. Then other people will even trying to venture in particular areas. So in both instances, it's the same, but you need that entrepreneurial spirit, that first mover spirit to do it. In certain instances, it's perhaps just too dangerous. So it's like, hey, I'm a billionaire outside here, outside Nigeria, working in areas where things work well. Why would I go into this dangerous little chasm, right? To go try and take over or do something like that, or challenge these people, given the set of consequences, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. So, how it plays out is a completely different scenario, but at least it's progress in my opinion. It's progress. It's better than what we have right now. Um, but that's a very unique perspective you brought up. I'm going to do my own. I'm going to go read up on some of the oligarch dominated society. I have to read up some few things too. Yeah, but that was a good point you brought up. And I hope you're enjoying Ghana though. I've not been to Ghana before. You been to Ghana before, Kaiser? Yeah, you there? What part of Ghana are
Yeah,
you, by the way? Is it Accra or Kumasi, or where are you in Ghana?
I am in Accra. I've been coming here for the past few years, at least a third or half the year I'm here,
For
right?
business,
And
for business, right? Or pleasure?
yeah, just business and digging myself into all kinds of holes and tying myself up in situations that I cannot get out of, that I have to grow into.
Okay.
Otherwise called business, right? In other words,
Yeah,
starting
yeah,
things.
yeah. It is business. So you're not looking at Nigeria right now. It's not something you even consider.
No, not right now. And so an aspect of that is there's certain areas that are easier to do things in. People, for example, one man asked me like, "Oh, how about the climate of the anti-Nigerian climate in Ghana?" See, that's a class thing, right? As it tends to be, right? Any kind of xenophobia tends to be very much pronounced in the lower classes, and even if the higher class people bring it up, they're just using it to galvanize the lower classes. So, if there's any anti-Nigerian sentiment, oh, the Ghanaians won't rent to Nigerians, blah blah blah. It's typically on a lower class thing, right? Like, I, and I now that I just realized that I was kind of referencing myself there. I hesitate to kind of put it in that kind of a way, high class, low class. But it's just a question of
That-
if if you're renting from certain places and from certain people, they don't care. Like who, like they don't care. Like, and this is generally true, anyways. In terms of, let's say, we see through history, the the kings being kind of like a cross cultural thing. You know about the Germans and the Russians and the English being cousins, right? Like in terms of the royal families, right? They're constantly moving back and forth between each other, right? So this tends to happen that way. Just to use an example. So which is also true. Like let's say when anyways, it's true also in Africa. But why not Nigeria? There's low hanging fruit and areas that are easier to operate. You're in the United States, for example, right? So you know how they say, if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere, or if you're raised in New York. So if you have the New York mindset, and then you see an opportunity in let's say in the South or Connecticut, somewhere, shall we say, softer than New York, versus New York, the South is a low hanging fruit. So I do the same thing in the United States in the sense that in where I operate in the United States, which is the West Coast, California, Washington, and Oregon. Washington and Oregon are softer than California. California is hard. California is tough, right, in terms of being business savvy and get that kind of a thing. If New York, if being like New York is the kind of North Star that we're using here. So I find it easier. I get more business in California. I mean, in Oregon and Washington, because as they say, it's like taking candy from a baby, shooting fish in a barrel, whatever you want to call it. People are nicer, really easy to get along with, or people are blah blah blah. You tend to have there's an information or kind of a personality asymmetry that you can take advantage of. Same thing in Ghana here. You know the difference between Ghana and Nigeria, even if you've never been to Ghana, right? You know that the same thing applies. That Nigeria is like New York, right? So why not go for the low hanging fruit? And then if you get a foothold in there, then because what I'm doing anyways is going to be for export, right? So if I can then get into the Nigerian market to export this palm oil and blah blah blah, at least that one aspect, then it's perfectly fine, right?
So
So
pretty
yeah,
much it's like you're not like totally shutting off the possibility of expanding into Nigeria. It's just like you're starting off from Ghana, then you see how it goes, and you can look at other places to expand to if it pans out well. Not like you're totally showing Nigeria at this point.
correct, exactly, exactly.
Right.
And yeah, and I don't know, the different personalities and different people have different ways of kind of approaching this thing here. Because some people want to just jump right into the deep end of the pool, and because people talk about a market, the size of a market, which is something I don't think people really understand. They look at a big market and they don't understand. Okay, obviously, if you look at the size of the market, you're like, why would you be, like if you're doing real estate, oh, why don't you build apartments in Nigeria instead of Ghana? Why don't you da, 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 da. Thing about a big market is also a hyper competitive market, right? Um, and that's just the case. So you may hear people state this kind of business fallacy all the time about, oh, it's $100 billion market. If we just get 1% of that market, we'll be great, And it's like you're not gonna get 1% of the market because because it's a knife fight in there. The tank is filled with sharks gutting each other over every half percent, right? And people undercutting each other for price and such and such. It's like if you look at the restaurant market, right? It's a huge market, but also with also a low barrier to entry, and hence very difficult to actually be successful in it because the margins are competed away. The larger the market, meaning the more developed it is, the more the margins are being competed away. So competition is just a way of saying low margins, right? That's just another thing. Oh, I'm going to jump into the middle of the pool here. Like, what you think people haven't? You think people haven't tried in all the different ways to fill in all the different corners and gaps? No, 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 no. So, just a thought there on the typical why not go for the larger market type of argument that people give.
So it wasn't you were not swayed with this so-called size. It was just you looked at the market size in Ghana and you felt okay, this was gonna be. Of course, there was competition, but not stiff enough to stifle your own business plans, right? It wasn't. So it was not like you were not. So you got the memo about the size of the market not being. I mean, it's a factor, but not a major factor to look at when investing. So Ghana, you chose Ghana instead. So
Exactly.
is it like agriculture, right? Agricultural.
Yeah, that's one
Agriculture.
aspect. It's agriculture and real estate, but agriculture I think is that's the bigger one because trying to do the whole soup to nuts thing in terms of
Yeah. By the way, before you move, right, the agricultural thing, because no, so the real estate thing, because I've been hearing to this horrible stories from Black Americans that they had issues with land and properties. You might just chime in on that. This because I don't because I don't live there. I just hear all these horrible stories online about they were duped. It's a land leasehold. Can you just educate the platform to let them know what's because that's your business. You are in that. So what's really going on?
so you don't own land outright. You get 99 years, right? And then you can renew um, after that. And I think after the third time, you actually have to then quote unquote buy it again. So it's like 300 years effectively. So that nobody, whether you're a citizen or not, can quote unquote just buy land and it's yours in Ghana. No. Am I 100% on that? I'll say 99% in the sense that maybe somebody pulls out some strange kind of arcane rule written somewhere where it's grandfathered in some particular obscure part of the country. That's possible. But effectively, don't expect to own land here. Having said that, I think 99 years is good enough, right? And then you kind of renew, you pay a fee, blah blah blah, right? So that's one aspect. The other aspect is, let me ask you this: have you done any kind of land purchases and stuff like that in Africa, in Nigeria, for example?
Yeah, I have some properties. Yeah, some
So
land.
how was that so you also know that people get, there are many ways to get scammed, right?
Right. Of
Okay,
course, because they're exploiting them not understanding the law, but them not also doing the due diligence
correct.
in purchasing the land because it's based on trust. They still have this. I'm coming back home, so therefore, people are going to welcome me with open arms, and it's like anywhere else. If somebody's very vulnerable, you tend to. It's just business practice. It's unfair business practice. I know. So it's just like when I hear people when they say, "Well," I'm like, "Did you hire any lawyer, any realtor, or something like that?" "Oh, we paid a family member." Like this, I'm like, "Wait a minute, you're from America,
Yeah,
you should
there's
do better."
it's
And,
almost like they don't have any local connections,
right.
right?
Yeah.
And the local connections they have are just part of maybe some kumbaya network of people who just told them, oh yeah, brother, whatever, right? That kind of thing. That's what I noticed because, I've bought several locations, building different things in other locations, including the farmlands as well. And in each case, I mean, it wasn't just completely hurdle free, right? um the cases where you literally look at the way the guy is talking, right? You listen to the way he's saying what he's saying, and you're like, what's going
Somebody,
on with that?
something is off here, right? You just like pay
Something is
attention.
off. So let me check this, check that, and then, oh, you found out that it's not actually his, and the king, blah blah blah. So now you have to bring these two people together, and then when you bring the two parties together, the guy, person A, starts saying something different than he told you before. And you're like, okay, cool. Doesn't necessarily blow off the deal. I'm giving an example of an actual example. It didn't necessarily blow off the deal, but now we know. Okay, now we know the real thing. What's really going on? And this is it's person B we actually need to be dealing with, and they're part of the same family as it tends to be. It's typically somebody that knows something about the land enough to feel comfortable to scam you in the neighborhood because they're kind of part of the neighborhood, right? As people tend to do, commit crimes. Well, when they get caught, anyways. I was going to talk about familiarity of the territory with regards to committing crimes and whatnot. But um, doing your due diligence, understanding the process, both informal and formal, having your own surveyor, your own lawyer. I even go as far as having a military guy that goes with me to these places, right?
Wow, military, huh?
So I show up with a guy in a uniform, right?
Oh,
Um,
so once they see that, they know. Okay, you're not playing. They,
exactly. No, you're not playing. It also facilitates access through, like, because they have these tolls as you're driving more towards a rural area, and the guy is driving the car, right? And so when the toll guys or the roadblock, whatever they call it, yeah, the roadblock, not toll gates, but roadblocks, uh, stops you, you're like, okay, cool, cool. And then also, I was able to put signs in the property saying you military property, that kind of thing, right? Keep off, whatever, those kinds of
wow.
things. With a certain amount of authenticity that yes, it is kind of a military property because I have this guy after all. These types of informal ways of moving, and I've been in the United States for at least 20 years now. But I grew up in Nigeria, so I don't find it strange to that these types of things need to happen. But I think if you come from a place where it's very heavily bureaucratic, right, and it's just a question of following processes and stuff, such as the United States, and you also have the added disadvantage of having this kind of I'm coming home and open arms stuff, which again, hence you're open to emotional manipulation. And
Right.
thirdly, I find that perhaps some of these people actually don't have businesses in the
Hmm.
United States, right? Um, because because if you have business in the United States, there's several things you're going to be a little sharper with regards to checking certain boxes, right, and making sure certain things go well. Um, Otherwise, and also with regards to operation, because there's the scamming aspect, and then there's the aspect of, oh, the business just isn't working out the way I thought it would work out. That also happens a lot in terms of people coming from the diaspora coming to kind of invest in Africa. It's like, well, if you don't have a business over there in the United States where it's easy, where there's access to credit, where you have the small business administration giving you loans and helping you do this, that, and the other, right? Why do you think you're going to come into the why do you think it's easier in the wild wild west? In the wild wild west, there's a more upside. Things can go parabolic, right? But
Hmm.
it's not
And that would be your
necessarily
very
easy.
first, and that would be your very first business to start.
Yeah, you want to start your first business in the jungle. Like, that's insane, right? the the jungle is to get the biggest bang for your buck, right? But obviously that comes with all the risks that you would expect. There's no free lunch, right? So people think the wild wild west is the easiest thing. Like, oh, I'm going to go to the frontier and and conquer the frontiers. Like, you haven't conquered the very tame zoo that you're in, and you want to go to the edge. So I think that that's also that a lot of people that complain, or a lot of people whom unfortunately have a bad
So I,
experience. Yeah.
you're using the zoo. I would say low hanging fruits, man. But
No,
yeah,
don't.
100%.
Yeah. There's low hanging fruit in the United States. That things are easy,
Well,
things are
that's
systematic,
what
and so on and so
thanks for being condescending. We appreciate it. Thank you for that. But it's
forth.
right.
Yeah. So I think that a lot of people, like, you see that a lot on YouTube. Like, people just on YouTube, like, oh yeah, and I'm going
You
to
see
start a business, and it's like,
that is why, that is where I get these things from. I'm like, because when they talk about it, the first time you hear them, all you hear is the story about scam. So, but when they go into details and you start watching old videos, you're like, wait a minute, what were you thinking? You just start to make sense. Like, I can see what they're doing wrong, but it's like you said, it's like when they go to Ghana or all these countries, they tend to isolate themselves from the locals. They don't understand the how things work there. They stay by with themselves within their own community, so they don't understand how things move. So I'm just I'm like, let me ask you about that to see if I'm making sense, or or something is off somewhere. Yeah, but I think it kind of aligns with what I thought was. But by the way, the other part, agriculture, are you investing in the entire value chain of whatever you're producing, or you just export it raw outside Ghana?
um, investing, yes, in the entire value chain, starting on one end of it. Right now, the end that we're starting from is getting the product from somebody else. In other words, just we have a good supplier of good palm oil, and then canning that, right? Which is adding value, because apparently not a lot of people do that here. Well, actually, no one is actually doing this canning of it'll surprise you sometimes, the things that people are just not doing, right? Um, so canning that, and then exporting that. But I have the land as well. Now it's going to take some time for the trees to mature and all that, blah 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 blah, right? Where then I'm going to be supplying my own palm. Okay, and it's not just palm oil, by the way. There's going to be some gari involved, and some maize for making banku and all that kinds of stuff, blah blah blah, right? So there are other things involved, but the palm oil, for several reasons, is kind of like the main thing. Also, including the difficulty with regards to passing certain regulations like the FDA and whatnot. Palm oil seems to be has the most hurdles there. But short answer to your question is yes. Investing in the entire value chain, starting at the end of getting the product from someone else right now and adding that value to it. But then we're also going to have the full farm and everything. So right now I just have like a little factory operating with the canning, getting cans from. Had to import machines from China and all that kind of stuff, right? So
Oh, that's great. Great job, Ike. IC3, you there?
Yes, this listening, very interesting conversation.
Hey,
Yes.
go ahead. Go
Yeah,
ahead and ask.
yes, yeah. Listening to a very interesting conversation.
Stop
Yes,
it,
yes, I'm
Kaiser.
compensating for my lower intelligence. Haha, solutions.
That's right. It's all about solutions. So yeah, I like when you said the value chain, BT Lobito, you asked Ike about the value chain. Um, what could you expand on what you meant by value chain?
Okay, let's take Ghana for instance. Ghana does a lot of cocoa, right? Like they used to export a lot of raw materials. So I'm like, let me look at the entire value chain. That means value chain just specifically means when it comes to monetary gains in terms of what you can make from each levels, from cocoa to the processing level to the branding to the marketing so the entire thing. So what they were doing, it was just exporting the raw materials, and I read somewhere that the entire value chain, they were only making about 15% of what they could have made if they if they grew the cocoa, if they processed it, if they, if you went to processing the manufacturing stage as opposed to just exporting out raw materials. So entire value chain just simply means that you maximize the gains from each level, from the ground up to the manufacturing to the processing, and maybe to the branding and exporting. So you kind of maximize profit as opposed to just exporting out the raw materials for others outside the country or outside of your location to benefit from. Why you can do the same thing and make more money off of it. So when the Ghana thing, for instance, was because I remember watching the president in Switzerland addressing I think that is the largest trade partner when it comes to cocoa, and talking about why am I sending you cocoa for you to make chocolate and send back to me? So why, so you send in raw, why you can have at least gone through from few stages of manufacturing before you ship it out, or make them come to your country and just set up businesses there, and then they can make it in your country. You make more money, you hire more people, then you can export out. So that's why
it's so ridiculous. They act like they just woke up from a dream. Like, oh, I had no idea why I was sending you raw material. I don't know.
I was shocked. I'm like, wait a minute, you didn't know this? I was shocked too. I'm like, wait a minute. Yeah, I get you. Yeah. So yeah.
Okay. So the value chain.
Hang on, just one point. Let me add this to, right. And I also want to disagree with the panelist here, right? I don't think there's anything wrong with not sending or sending raw materials to the West or anyone, really. That's not the issue. The issue is the fact that you can't be organized to resolve whatever problem comes with whichever system that you choose to operate in. Even if you send so-called value-added products, you'll still be stuck in a value chain within that whole process. It won't change anything, actually.
Okay, let me do a TE interpretation, right? So basically,
very good. That's where I was going.
If Ghana was adding value, in other words, in other particular aspects of other commodities, maybe it's gold, maybe it's something else. Well, okay, we've chosen that we're going to be making electronics out of our gold, and we have the full value chain here. But with regards to cocoa, well, we're just going to export it, right? Because you cannot do everything, right? You cannot do everything with everything, right? You can't take all commodities and take it all the way. You have to typically focus, because with specialization comes certain advantages, right? But the idea is there is no any particular vertical silo value chain that we're doing the full thing with, right? So Kaizo's highlighting the point that it's not that it is wrong to just export raw stuff, no, but you need to be in a position where you can choose what and he mentioned not being organized enough to be even able to do one of these and then choose to not do the other.
Okay, so good point, very good point. So see, this value chain, I like to discuss and really dig into this concept of the value chain and how it works. Kaiser kind of asked a good question there. See, shipping and distribution and in the shop. So these, you didn't mention those, Lobito, in as part of the value chain.
No, that would be what it would call like an outbound logistics. Because you have like operations and inbound marketing sales. So that would be part of it.
Right.
So
okay.
People have different interpretation of it, but the whole idea is that maximizing profit, like across that very product. Let's say cocoa, for instance. From what it takes to plant it to it becoming chocolate bar. That entire value chain, that's what I'm talking about. From cocoa to chocolate bar to the branding on top of it. The entire value chain of it.
Right. And also the retail as well.
Right.
And then if you move into retail, then you're moving into property, land, and spaces and distribution, where exactly who the people are. You see, so this value chain is a very complex.
It's a very long one, by the way. It's a very long one. It's a very long chain.
Yes. So just like is it not De Beers? I mean, I think they've got a shop in Piccadilly, into their shop. So they're getting the diamonds. So from the diamonds to the actual shop, where the people can actually go into the shop. You see, so once you start going into distribution, it makes you wonder how much power is in distribution as part
A
of the value
lot,
chain.
A lot of power, man. He controlled
a lot of
there's a lot of power.
yeah, and if I may, so if you take for example, you have these choke points in shipping, the
Yes.
strait of this and the strait of that, right? We know about these. And every once in a while, the Somalis bring everybody to their knees by choking up some particular strait of something, right? With their fine seamanship or whatever. So that controlling, for example, the Strait of Hormuz, like let's say maybe that's kind of Iran's thing. The simple fact that, because we're talking about distribution, you don't have to produce any oil, you don't have to do anything, but you can bring the whole oil market to its knees simply by having some water in your backyard, right? Same thing applies
Right.
with banks, whom are
Yes.
middlemen for exchanging of value, right?
Hmm.
You don't have to do anything other than just be the trusted person that enters something in a ledger, and you're the guy that they trust that when it's in your ledger, it's true, it happened, the transaction happened, and you can corner a whole market, and you can suck a lot of value out of something just by doing that. Also, with regards to when you talk about like individual companies needing to distribute their idea or their whatever it may be, you can be you create an app, but Apple and the App Store can bring you to your knees, okay, because they have the distribution. You can have an idea that you want to spread, but YouTube can bring you to your knees because they have the distribution.
Right. Excellent. So a person or people or a group of people that are focusing on production and the product, does it require a different group of people or a different mindset to focus on getting power in distribution?
Depends on how much you're scaling up, or it's how big it is. Some people focus entirely on just production, processing, but they will have like vested interest in distribution where they don't control the operations, but they have shares in that company. So people have a different way of lowering costs. Where I'm solely focused on extracting this gold or whatever it is. I'm also doing manufacturing, but I'm so stretched thin. I don't have enough resources to go forward. But I will buy the trucks. I will for so they can involve themselves. It depends on how big you are and how you're expanding your market rates. Nobody starts out doing the entire thing at the get go. In
Yes,
most cases, you expand over time. You know,
correct. And if I may add to answering your question, IC3. So the trivial answer to your question is yes, of course, it's going to be different people whom are going to be focusing on different things. And the idea typically is to be able to have control of your entire value chain so that you don't have any point anywhere that somebody can bring you to your knees, right? And I'm going to bring in one example that we typically talk of with regards to overcoming the euro dollar issue, right? If we want to trade amongst ourselves, but without the need to get the dollars, because that's the issue, right? I, you know, to get palm oil across from here to Tanzania, there's a whole value chain, let's say. And everyone in the value chain is interested in getting paid. And if they want dollars, then whatever scheme that we came up with regards to circumventing the dollar, like, hey, Baba T's in Tanzania, I'm over here in Ghana, and we're going to say, hey, you know what? Screw this euro dollar thing. Why don't you just send me such and such amount of rice, and I'll send you such and such an amount of palm oil. But if somebody in the middle there, including a truck driver somewhere or some shipper or somebody, is not in line with our program of not accepting the dollars, right? Uh, then it's going to all fall apart. So that is an example of a particular kind of a scheme that you have, whereby it's in your interest to control the entire value chain, especially distribution, right? In this case, the scheme being circumventing the dollar. But there are many other things, including just the data operation of your business, such that somebody does not bring you to your knees. That it behooves you to want to expand into that completely. So as Babati said, yes, or BT, yes, you want to then expand into that. So BT also mentioned something about perhaps getting interests in these companies, or in other words, in the distribution. If you look at um, PayPal and eBay was an example. eBay had a distribution, right? PayPal had this service whereby you can pay with email, right? They were the first to kind of come up with do this fintech thing, if you will, right? And eBay was a company that was not interested in PayPal at all, whatever, but they did kind of like a coup, almost a bottom up thing, whereby because the people selling, they saw eBay as a great way to get their product into use and distribution and whatnot. And there was a kind of a way they could enter, because it was fairly democratized in terms of, easy barrier to entry in terms of, getting in there and, getting to the sellers of eBay and saying, hey, here's this product. It's called PayPal. And by the way, here's this little logo thing that you can put in your products. It says, we use PayPal, blah, blah, blah. So the virality then happened through eBay, because of PayPal planted that virus in there, up to the point that eBay then had to bow down to PayPal, ended up buying them. You can see that as a good thing or a bad thing, but it was good for the people who started PayPal, because that was their exit, right? They sold it for billions, right? But this kind of thing happens over and over again, in the sense that there's a distribution channel. It can make or break you, and there are ways in which you can infiltrate it from the inside and then force them. They forced eBay's hand to do the bidding of PayPal at the end of the day.
Excellent, excellent, wonderful breakdown. Yeah, but I like the way you said it. So important, just to put that little logo in there, and it goes back to what Lobito was saying about the brand and values and trust, and which links back to the value chain, trust chain, and branding. And so I was thinking this as well. When if you're thinking from the first steps of the chain of the raw material, but what is the mindset of kind of thinking at the other end, at the other extreme end of the snake, from the raw material of whatever it is? What is the actual other end? What do you perceive the other end of that chain to be? What does it look like?
I'm gonna, if I know you ask esoteric questions, so I'm gonna answer in an esoteric way.
Yeah.
The other end really is a meme, meaning the other end is a consensus. And the reason why it's a meme is because it tends to spread virally in terms of copying. People copy other people. A consensus with regards to the fact that something is valuable, right? So you start with, I'm digging something out of the ground, right? The reason you're digging it, let's say you're digging, maybe there was a point when maybe pencils were made with lead. That's why they call it lead pencils. But let's just say graphite. You're digging graphite out of the ground because somebody is willing to pay a price of that, because somewhere down the line, and you don't know if it's for pencils or whatever, someone has deemed a pencil to be valuable. Now, there's some things where you can just trace the direct value of something, like, okay, pencil because writing. But if you kind of squint your eye a little bit, you might even understand that, well, why is writing valuable, right? Why is gold valuable? Why is anything valuable? Why is that shoe valuable? Why is silk better than this? Blah, blah, blah. And that is a meme. That is a cultural artifact. It is not anything inherent in the materiality of anything, right? It is human beings have decided that something is valuable. So that is the mark. If you come down now to business school logic, it's what you call marketing and branding, right? You're gonna tell these people, hey, this thing over here is great, and look, Brad Pitt is wearing it, or Brad Pitt wants it, or Brad Pitt is reading, or Brad Pitt uses these words. It could mean something as crazy as words, as an idea, right? Bitcoin, for example, right? Why is it valuable? It's because of that mimetic consensus that human beings have developed, sometimes with the aid of other people marketing it, that something is of value.
100%. Fantastic. Yes. So, because what I was thinking, listening to you speaking, that okay, that other end of the meme, other end of the chain. I love the way you tied it up into. It's just a meme. It's just an aspect of culture. Therefore, if this is true, which I think it is, that the solution to the perceived or agreed problem with Africa and Africanness is going to be in the realm of the meme. So like the true African Union, to achieve true inter business between all the African states, the true inter-African business, it's going to be the right meme, isn't it?
But that's achieving increasing trade within African countries. Are they even signed that AFTAC bill yet? Most African countries have not even signed that yet. Basically, what the bill is saying is to make trading activities amongst African countries easier. Because me from Nigeria now, if I want to ship something to Kenya through road, do you know how many stamps I need to get through? That's not been resolved. In some African countries, it's actually cheaper to even fly from Europe down there than to fly to Kenya, I guess, in some cases.
Oh, not some, all of them.
Huh?
Not some, all of them.
Yeah, which is a problem for someone that if you want to, so the business class is not, there's no incentive, it's not encouraging enough to say you want to the trade. Even the currency exchange has to be rectified. You can base it on a dollar value, but the actual exchange has to be within those two currencies. So there are many things that Africans need to fix to resolve that problem. I see three, if you want to encourage that trade within African countries. Okay, but for now, go ahead. Go ahead.
So IC3 is, if you're going to come with an idea, with a meme, with a sales pitch, some kind of marketing, One Africa or whatever it is, right? You have to come also with practicalities, right? You need to bring, the bread in bread and circus is actual bread, IC3. Okay, it's not fake bread, right?
Yeah, it's true.
So you actually have to say, look, we have been able to establish some sort of a system whereby it is actually cheaper to go from Ghana to Tanzania than it otherwise would be with blah, 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 blah. So there has to be actual, this is good news, by the way, right? In the sense that it's not all magic. It's not all just, oh, how do I find the right way and the right words and the right people and twist right? I'm just like, no, there's real problems on the ground that you have to solve to bake that real bread, and then you bring the circus with it, and you bring the whole marketing with it, and now you have the people behind you that will then say, yes, let's go for this. But you are right that it is a meme. The meme has to come, or these meme lords, or the people who take advantage of this kind of marketing or whatever the hell it may be, have to bring an actual solution, or say, hey, typically the way I say it is, look, it's always a war of elite against elite. If you're going to come in with your new elite, the new elite saying the One Africa elite, which is going to divide itself from all the unwashed, all the dirtiness associated with, let's say, Pan-Africanism, because Pan-Africanism as a brand it's a bad brand, right? So first of all, you're coming in and saying, look, this is new Pan-Africanism, okay? I'm different from those other guys. Here's why I'm different. Here are the things that I'm telling you that resonates with you. And here's actually practical proof, evidence of why, if you go with my way, in other words, again, yeah, like I'm saying, you've solved an actual problem. Then they would move to you, presumably. Even then, it's not 100% guaranteed. You might have to try 100 different ways. That's just the way things work. That's the way marketing and sales work. But each time you have to come with something real. Each try has to be something real, not just a whole bunch of talk.
Right. So I like people like Hike I've always said I should have a business visa or a passport on the African continent to make it, because he has actual business. He has proof that he has actual business. He's running something. It should be. They should make it easy for him to say, "I want to just." I know in West Africa it's easy because of the passport. We kind of have a deal with West Africa. You can move around. But what happens once it leaves West Africa? I want to go to East Africa to expand. What happens? What is the deal with that? So I hope you see the point Ike is making here. You have to actually fix the problem.
Okay, so that's what we're discussing. That's what we're kind of exploring. Solutions, yeah, because like Kaza was saying, yes, I'm thinking solution. Like, okay, so what do you think of this? This is the model I'm working with. I quite correctly mentioned the elite. Okay, so there's the elite, and then amongst then there are those at the that aspire to be in the elite. So I see that you say to the lower class. I see the model as a white supremacist system, value system. So what you have to do is that in the exchange, in the change, you get yourself involved in the change. So what do I mean by that? So I'm saying, look, I'm using reparations as a model, as a business model, as a marketing model, and I'm saying, look, we want reparations for colonialism, racism, slavery, and so on for Black people. And then on my marketing promoter, I say there's a White People Protection League, as part of the model.
Sorry, actually, are you buying into all this reparation talk?
No. Don't think about. I'm not talking about reparations now. Just think of that as it could be cocoa, whatever. I'm not talking about reparations there. I'm talking about the elite and solutions. So, yesterday, we had a group of white people came over looking at the plan that we was presenting, and they said, "What is this White People's Protection League?" And I explained, listen, if you as a white person help or assist in the reparation claims, you will be rewarded. So what's the basic point? The point is that by rewarding one group of white people with the reparations taken from another group of white people, you're actually transferring wealth from one group of white people to another group of white people. But in that transfer, in that change, that's the crack or the opening for you who are outside that system to create something, just like the Haitian Revolution, right? It was only because Napoleon was doing so well, was shaking up Europe, that it caused instability over there, which allowed the Haitian Revolution to succeed temporarily. So I'm not probably presenting it too well, but are you getting the point? If there's huge changes or unstableness within the elite status, then there becomes an opportunity for you to make a change. Does that make sense? What I'm saying there? To make huge changes.
Go ahead, Babati, if you want to take a stab at that one first, or if you had any questions. I guess he's muted. You know that so let me just state my principles. The world is chaos. Even Napoleon Maybe they're within his time and even within his particular circumstance. Perhaps there would be maybe 1,000 would-be Napoleons, right? And the particular one that fell into the particular slot and became the world historical personality, given a confluence of historical events as well, is just up to chance, as we tend to use the word, right? Maybe if you're a god, and especially from the perspective of from a god's eye view, you understand the movement of every little molecule, so there's no such thing as randomness, right? But from the point of view of Mr. IC3, the movements of gas are random, and there's certain block, we can take chunks of it and predict with chunks, but we're not going to follow each individual molecule. And that's just the limitation, the computational limitation that we have. Why am I saying all this? I'm agreeing with you, but I'm adding the aspect of uncertainty. You never quite know what will work, just like the other 999 would-be Napoleons didn't end up being the Napoleon, right? However, you have to try, right? And you have to play for keeps. You have to play in the big leagues, and you have to actually try to do things that are impactful. And these things, thereby, from a mindset point of view, involves you having a mindset of not being risk averse, also getting your hands dirty because of chance, right? Because if you sit in your basement and just think of the perfect way, it's never going to happen, right? You need to actually throw yourself in the arena, because then you're respecting the fact that the gods and fate and will then maybe you find you to be a useful instrument at some point, right? So I hope you see what I'm saying there. That
Okay, excellent. So I'm going to challenge you now, because I think the back and forth will bring out more of what's going on here. So you started off, the world is chaos. Now I want to challenge that. I'd like to say that the world is definitely not chaos. The planet could be seen in that way, I would say, but a world is a construct. Just like if you go into a shop and you buy a map of the world, whoever designed that map, right? If your nation or your country is not on that map, right, then you are not part of the world. The world is a construct on the planet. There's a planet, but then there's the world, and the world is a construct. And that also spins into the concept of the market. See, a lot of people see the market as it's a level playing field, but I say no. The market is an aspect of the world. It's a construct, and there's two schools of thought. There's those that are trying to do their best within the world, looking for opportunities within the world, within the construct. Yes, they're trying to do their best, make as much money as they can, be successful within the world. But the world is not chaos. So
let me pause you there.
Go on.
I am not. So the person you just described, yes, this is let's say the majority of highly capable people whom are able to actually perform things. They have enough competence to go out there in the world and compete. The majority of them are in the category you just described. Yes. Now, I agree with you that when I put a piston in an engine and I say that I ignite here at a certain temperature and pressure, it'll result in a certain amount of force over there, right? That is a construct that I can well kind of define. And that's why I was using gases in this whole kind of, and I'm still using gases when I'm talking about pistons and engines. But the action of each individual molecule of gas, I do not have the computation. No human being has the way of grasping that. It's still chaos to us. So the construct, which you call the world, or let's say no. Let's start with the planet. So the planet is the gas, the chaos, right? And then you put a construct around it, a market or whatever. Or I say, I put a piston, or I put a system of measurements, where I
Yeah,
say,
engine. Yeah.
yeah, an
Okay.
engine, right?
Social
But
engineering.
exactly. However, when you need to change something, you actually are more dependent on um, the actual chaotic action of these, because the change is different from simply trying to maintain a construct, right? If you're coming in, you're trying to change, or trying to nudge somebody away, or trying to break something, um, you need to respect the chaos. You need to go back to the planet, right? And you need to try different ways of building a new engine around it, right? Now, I don't think we will ever see in the same way, in the sense that, as I'd like to talk about the muddy and the wet way in which I look at things, right? But versus you, and you like to be pristine and stuff. I see the pristine little engine and the boxes and stuff, and I use that as models for, you know, capturing my gases, capturing weather patterns and such. But not but, however, it is my particular, and it's just maybe just a question of the spirit, even, to really deal with the fact that in there is still chaos, and if I'm going to change something, I need to understand. And because I've looked at historical things, and know that every once in a while some crazy stuff happens in the weather pattern that is not predicted by my model, or some crazy thing happens in the engine that I did not foresee. And this, nature or chaos reasserts itself every once in a while. And in the kind of enterprise I'm trying to undertake in, which is an enterprise of change, I need to try to recruit that power of chaos into my left pocket. Not at all taking anything away from your clean engine models, markets, and worlds, if I'm making sense.
Okay, very good. I still challenge you again, because I like your fundamental understanding that, yes, okay, there's social engineering, this world, this engine, this market is socially engineered, and that it's socially engineered to be anti-African. And I like the way that you're seeking chaos, because chaos is a place that it's from chaos. You use chaos to, or everything you need to construct an engine, a social, a world, is in chaos. So now, if you are perceived, because you're not in chaos, you're actually in a world. You are operating in a world. You're not operating in chaos. So if you start bringing in elements of chaos, then that moves into the realm of crime and corruption, and they'll sense the
Well,
system will sense.
let me use a term. Not necessarily. You like that term. You're a logic guy, so it's not necessarily that. And to be irreverent, or to be a new person, to be a Napoleon, means you're coming in with your new tablet from the mountain on high. You go up and you speak to Yahweh, and you come back with your new tablets, right? To hell with whatever the hell anybody else thought was law, because you're involved in a completely different kind of enterprise, a risky enterprise, to be sure. Risky in the sense of very high chances of failure, as I gave like a good example of like over 1,000 Napoleons. But even if you stretch it out into history, there have been millions of people trying different things, bulking against. First of all, I mentioned, competent people. Let's say that's a 5%, and then you have like a 1%, and then now you're going to the less than 1% of people whom even look at the world as though laws were made by men, and who cares, right? And yes, there are standards. I'm not talking about, I think, for example, the 10 Commandments are pretty good. Like, I don't want to go killing people, right? And stuff like that. There's certain things which, after all, you are a construct as well as a human being, right? You're not just some kind of free thing. So you have to operate within, and I'm not a psychopath. At least I don't think so, right? Not in the usual way of the term, but we are in this place where we are willing to wipe slates clean. Now, yes, if you're coming in with a new order, it can't just be chaos, but you're operating in chaos and you're ignoring the old order, and you don't care what they say about whether or not you're going to end up, because we know that these particular rules are only there to keep the vested interests in power. And I also mentioned earlier that as long as you succeed, okay, the people will immediately turn to you, because again, we're talking
Yeah.
about 99% of people, because this is a 1% endeavor, right? The 99% of people are not trying to, they don't even, and again, if you go down to, let's say, maybe like in the bottom 50%, they don't even have any conception of a place where people come up with new things, right? New laws, new ways, new modes, right? So they're just fall in line with whomever has the power at that time. So I just wanted to say that, while you were saying that, kind of like, hey, not necessarily that just because I'm operating in the world. And also, by the way, yes, you're operating in the world, but you have a mind, and there's always you, when there's information asymmetry, and when there is also this particular kind of if you're operating with your own rules outside, and you're not open to emotional manipulation, let's say, or uh, which we all are. But if you're limiting your openness to emotional manipulation, limiting your openness to fall for the reward systems and the recognition, which and the mimetic types of things, which we all are susceptible to, right? I give the example of being invited to Davos to go sit with Henry Kissinger, he may his soul rest in peace, under bright chandeliers, and over there in the corner is Tony Blair, right? And all these other kinds of things, that the sheer splendor of it seems great. And they'll pat you on the head and even tell you, yeah, Mr. IC3, I love your idea about this and that and the other, right? um, to not fall for that, to still hold firm to your idea of what you are trying to construct, is the substantive difference, right? That is where you, because you're holding chaos in your head, you're knowing that, hey, this is all a construct there, and you and the value system that you've created here, which I feel, and the hormones rushing through me right now are telling me that this is great, but I know that it's all a construct, and that is the means by which I'm going to maintain my fight, if any of this is making sense.
Yes, excellent. Because to illustrate, we see that a lot of people think business, they don't really see the cultural aspect. But you have, what is it, America trying to pressurize, is it Ghana or some African country to accept homosexual marriage? And
Ghana, and
yeah. And then we'll say, well, what has that got to do with business? We're doing trade here. Okay, what's the price?
It's very
Why do we get involved with my marriage? What are
Exactly.
we doing?
It's very interesting because you see, there are different. It helps. So you are. I think that in certain ways, your evaluation, your characterization of the particular elite that rules at the time is particularly apt. It's rather correct, because there are many ways to be a ruling oligarch, right? Many things you can care about. Like, for example, why does this particular set of ruling oligarchs care about, gay marriage? So, like, well, what is it, right? One would imagine that if you were being ruled by Xerxes, the Persian emperor, he just wants your taxes, right? Which indeed he did. That he actually left you to do your cultural thing, similar to the Romans, for example. Like, Caesar doesn't necessarily care, but this particular group actually cares, okay? And there is a social. It's a weird. Okay, and this is where my expertise, at least, when it comes in understanding the social psychological things that are going on with a group of people whom actually care about these types of things, right? So they actually do care about it. Harvard University and the New York Times and the Davos men and that kind of mimetically, again, this set of values that they have is also mimetically created. It's not necessarily the case that each of them came up with it. That's why it sounds so crazy to you. You're like, you don't see the logic of it. But it's a social kind of thing where they've all been drawn into a certain kind of consensus simply by social pressures. And these are the consensus of the elite. These are the right things to do. This is how what it means to be good in the world, and we represent the good, right? The good justice, democracy, the American way, whatever
Yes,
type,
that's
whatever
right.
they want to say to it. This is the ruling class. This is the nature of the ruling class that we're dealing with. Hence, the whole kind of it's particularly apt, that particular Bible verse. You don't deal with flesh and blood, but with principalities and powers. Uh, in this particular case, and also your kind of way of looking at things in terms of for that uh, construct, ideas, mimetic type of things is also apt. But yes, I see what you're saying. So it's not a simple thing that they're after. They're not just after your dollars, like let's say the Chinese might be, right? But the Western elite has a different thing going on. They have the
Exactly.
Messiah complex that they got
Right.
going.
Yes. Yes. Because a lot of people, they don't really understand that. Even myself growing up, I thought, if I, as an individual, if I do my job properly, if I'm really good at my job, I should earn good money, and that's it. I'm making money for myself. I'm making money for the company. But as the years went by and I went to higher and higher levels, it always ended up with sex. They're always trying to get me involved in some sexual perversion at the higher levels. I could never get my head around it. I was like, what is going on? I thought this is about money. I'm making your money. I'm getting money. What? Why do you want to get involved in my home life, my wife and my home? What's going on? So,
Mhm, mhm.
so yeah, understanding that you just how you described, we're dealing with a strange new type of elite, aren't we? And then that's going to take a different way of thinking of how to challenge that. And I think a lot of African leaders and a lot of people in Africa are thinking about how do we fight the attack on our cultural values. We
Yeah, I
understand you
think
want
that.
to, yeah,
Yeah, I think from a instinctive place, the Africans have the right instincts, right, in terms of the pushback against that. Which, by the way, perhaps this need not be mentioned, but it doesn't have anything to do with whether or not you think it's right or wrong to the LGBT blah blah blah, right? It has nothing to do
that's
with
right,
that,
that's right,
right?
correct,
So I'm not taking a stance on that at all. But the instinct of saying, hey, don't touch this is the right instinct. I don't necessarily think they have the
correct,
understanding though.
correct.
They don't have the because that's just an instinct. It's like an impulse. They just kick back when you tap that part of their knee. The leg goes up, right? But to understand, like, well, why do these people think in this way? Then you really have to go into the mind of, and I don't like to use political terms like liberal because it doesn't really mean anything in our case, even though it does mean something, but I'm using it in a very particular way, right? Um, the This particular liberal elite that actually thinks they're doing good in the world, right? That has many different roots from enlightenment and whatnot, and thinking that they're spreading some kind of uh, betterment and such, that this is the type of person you're dealing with. And to be honest, this is not a Napoleon or a Caesar, but and also they're not individuals, by the way. They're a group, right?
That's right,
And this group has maintains itself by perpetuating its prestige, right? The New York Times is prestigious. The whatever thing, whatever the London whatever is prestigious. The Harvard University is prestigious, and they also, by the way, are able to. They have in them or with them one of the aspects that I mentioned. In other words, practical solutions. For example, Harvard has smart people. Okay, forget in other words, that's a tool in the marketing bag, right? They attract the best. Again, my whole thing about you need to be able to attract the best, my whole kind of elite versus elite struggle. When you actually are able to attract the best, that brings out the prestige in you. And when out of this best you're able to do things like maybe the Manhattan Project once every 100 years or something like that, or where you're able to kind of, yes, these are the best and finest, and I can control them, and we can do these interesting things in physics, blah blah blah. That keeps the aura of legitimacy and prestige with them. But the
Yes.
actual social program that they have is very well understood, and it's propagated by rather mediocre people, let me say. And mediocre not meaning that they're dumb or anything. I'm just saying that you're typical smart, high IQ, went to Harvard, now works at the State Department, and is working in a bunch of NGOs and editing bills for some senator somewhere, and thinking that they're doing good in the world. That's the person you're dealing with. That's the group. That's the clique, and they have a lot of control. And so that is the nature. Before getting into how you defeat them, there are many features that you can add to kind of see and paint and then understand, like, what is this thing that I'm trying to fight against, right? Because some people, for example, will make the mistake of saying, oh, well, it's people like Elon Musk, right? Elon Musk is a different thing altogether, right? That's it's just a different thing altogether, and it's an easy target. It's like, oh yeah, it's the capitalist.
That's right. He just an aspect. Yeah, he's just a symptom of the thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and he has his own aims and whatever. Like, but the thing that you're trying to deal with, which some, when it comes to the State Department, some people call it the blob. The blob is difficult. It's to deal with. It changes. It morphs. It's faceless, right? It's not this. It's not John D. Rockefeller or something like that. No, it's a blob, right? And now there are ways. I was mentioning with Baba T, saying that, look, the way to defeat this blob is with an individual, right? Something, and we were using terms such as entrepreneurial capital versus managerial capital, which is just another reflection. As you know, or as you sometimes say, when you have a formula, it just kind of, you can expand it, contract it, you can see it in different places,
Yeah,
right?
scalable. Yeah,
So,
that's right. Yeah.
so in the world of capitalism, you have the entrepreneurial person, whom is like a Genghis Khan or an Elon Musk, and then you have the managerial people, and they're very different. The elite we deal with are more of that managerial class, whom tend to be more consensus driven, relatively risk averse, mimetically driven. They don't have an individual vision. They're just here to maintain whatever it is the Davos elite says. And these days it's ESG and LGBT and whatever crazy nonsense they happen to be. It makes them identify, because also these are luxury beliefs. These are ways in which by which they identify each other, right? It's like a secret handshake. So you believe this, I believe this. Okay, we are in the club, and people crave being in the club. Okay,
that's right. Because that's
and
how
that's how
the world is the market as well. That's right. Go on.
Yeah, and there's a lot of power socially, and then also obviously physically, in terms of access and stuff that comes with that. But this is the nature of that beast, and I think that the counter to that beast is a Genghis Khan type person, is more of an individual type. In which case, I would say, I'm not saying Elon Musk is the answer. I'm saying that Elon Musk is in the mold of the opposite of this type of person.
Oh, interesting.
He's in a different mold. He's not. That's why he goes in and fucking cuts 85% of the blob at Twitter. Not that he's your friend, or that he's going to blah blah. It's just like, it's a different mindset than the enemy. The enemy is a blob.
The blobs. Right. Because that is what Africa and the African diaspora are working overtime. Their head is spinning, trying to think how to defeat this blob. I like the way that you said it's almost moving into this individual, this super individual, is like a messiah kind of situation that sparks everything else off. The personification of the idea to counter the so-called blob, because a lot of people that don't really understand, and maybe it's not really a mass thing. A lot of people, it's not necessary to have a lot of people understand the blob. Maybe it's just the new elite will understand it, because they don't. You see, as we were saying before, there's to dominate and to move into culture, whilst most people think it's just business. So as you're describing, it is the world, it is the market, it's and to challenge any aspect of the market and the world is to challenge that blob, and then they're going to rain down on you. And I think was brilliant as well that you brought out is that would you agree that it's the moral high ground? Somehow they're making Africa look immoral, or African morality is primitive because they have not accepted cultural aspects of this blob. So therefore, it's their mission to try and civilize the.
So in that case, when looked at from that perspective, this is the effect of it. For them, these individuals actually think, oh, we're trying to do the right thing. We're trying to get them in the right way. How could they be doing this? This is backwards, and it's not the kind of civilization that a different type of enemy might want to do. These guys actually think they're doing something right for Africans in Africa.
Exactly.
Right.
It's the same.
They have a religion.
White man's burden. It's the same thing.
Yeah. Definitely similar. Definitely similar. Now, you see, the reason why, or let me put it this way: one of the mistakes people make when fighting against the blob is to try to attack its 1,000 different seeming heads, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, they said this. That's not right. Oh, they want you to do that. Oh, that's so the African kind of like kicking back at them.
Yeah.
I think it's actually like on a higher level though, in terms of it does. I think you need to hit it hard and big, and I think that
I like that. I like
that
that.
African impulse of kicking back against the LGBTQ thing is as an example of like a hard big, but the problem is it's not conscious, right? It doesn't really. The African feels this anti-LGBT thing a bit more viscerally, right? That's where they're coming from.
Yeah.
And the reason when I say hard and big, you don't go arguing about, oh, they said DEI, or oh, today it's social justice that they're saying. Oh, tomorrow they're saying this. Oh, today they pulled out another ridiculous thing, and then you keep on arguing each of these points, thinking you're winning a battle. Let me go donate to this political party, and they're gonna take down the whatever, right? And it's like, no, you have to hit their legitimacy at the very top. Let's say at somewhere like at Harvard, for example, like to show that Harvard is an empty suit, for example. Which, by the way, it's not completely empty. That it's a tough one because they have, as I mentioned, those practical things, right? But to go into the heart of the practical things that they claim they have and to challenge that, for example, like one thing that Peter Thiel does. Peter Thiel is just some guy. For anybody listening, doesn't really matter who he is. But it's to challenge the science departments. So there's certain departments at Harvard, for example, whom you can say are lying. The social sciences, for example, filled with lies, and they're not really making progress, and they're doing all kinds of bad things. But that's not really where the power is. But if you to go up to the sciences and say, look, you physicists are not really doing anything, and you guys have been lying about the progress, the technological advancements that's not been taking place. That's why the economy has been going down. And by the way, your economics department lied about how they calculated the hedonic adjustments for calculating inflation, which basically just says something about, well, yeah, you're starving, but the iPhone 3 is way smoother, so you're better off than 1983, right? That kind of thing. Sure, you can't afford a house and feed your family and all that kind of stuff, but look at this other thing. It's called the hedonic kind of adjustment in terms of blah blah blah. But these types of things, those are the places where you hit them, and you forget the rest, because the rest are a complete distraction and a waste of your time to be arguing about. Oh, today it's feminism. Oh, tomorrow it's LGBTQ. Oh, it's like no. You'll fight that forever, and you'll never make any headway. You have to go right to the head of the legitimacy and strike there. And who can do that? And that's why I say again, that's why I said like someone like Elon Musk has the mold, because of all the other people who could say something, right? He's the one that actually says something. When you have another person like Mark Zuckerberg, and he's there testifying in front of Congress, and they told him to apologize to some parents because something happened on Facebook and somebody got hurt, and it wasn't really his fault, right? And there are ways in which he could have said, "Look, no, Mr. Senator, it's actually your fault, right? Because of X, Y, Z." No, Mr. Mark Zuckerberg turned around and apologized sheepishly, right? Um, yeah, I'm not saying that whether he apologized or not is going to be the be all end all, but I'm talking about the actual targets need to be, and it's just typical, it's just simple military principle at the end of the day, right? You have to hit it at where it hurts and where it gets its source of legitimacy and where it's its strongest. The place where they go, oh,
100%.
after all, we're here and we have the science and we have this and we have that. Hit them there because there's a lot of corruption in there as well.
BT Lobito, was you going to say something?
No, because to the point about going to the heart of the problem is an example would be I think it was the head of Harvard that came in to the Congress, and she was asked about her defining what a woman is, and she found it difficult, and she was trying to quote some sciences. Because I've heard that even in these Ivy Leagues, they are forcing people to change their research projects if you go away from what it's like you're researching, but they've already marked, or there's an expectation of what they want the end result of your research to be. So if you come with something contrary to that, they'll force you to change research projects. So if you say, for instance, I was reading somewhere where somebody said there was no direct correlation between I don't know, this famous guy from, was it Harvard or Yale, that there was this police incident where they claim it was racism, and he did his own investigation, and turns out there was nothing. It wasn't a racist anything. There's no direct correlation. They made this particular individual change research project to just to show that it was racism. So there's this narrative that they want you to present in these institutions, and like I say, if you can go in there, I don't know how, to disprove all those things and show that they are lying about it, then you put that credibility into question, the so-called Ivy League schools. And you can challenge the heart of the problem, where it's coming from. It's from these institutions. It's a very tough tax. I have to confess. It's a tough tax. It's a lot of funding, a lot of somebody has to back you up, a group of people out there that believe in that project. Elon Musk is too political to lead that charge.
Yeah, it's too political. There's this guy called Bill Ackman that recently got into fighting with Harvard, and it was specifically because of so it was a Supreme Court justice that could not define a woman, but the Harvard professor got in
Right.
trouble for the Jew thing, small hat thing about whether or
Right.
not.
So like show me the science about what you mean by a woman. Because the funny part, the irony is like she's coming there as a black woman. So you cannot even define what a woman is, and you're still here. What about that's unlike you, the head of Harvard. It's just
Yeah,
those
and people argued about that, and people made a whole, and that is an example of those fights that are completely fruitless and useless. Arguing about, oh, she could not define a woman. Where did that get you? You have to go all the way to the top, like and show them to have no clothes.
yeah,
right?
something that came from a faulty research. That's this. Yeah, so when you challenge those research projects, but you also have to carry on. I mean, not actually, you're actually carrying any investing that much money to put it that men are different. Man, we already know that. It's just to dig up some research projects just to counter whatever they have out there, because your position is still stronger than whatever they have. And if anybody that calls themselves a doctor, what bothers me is when you have doctors coming out to defend, this trans, I mean, we move from gender dysphoria to, we've kind of changed diagnosis over the years, but the new norm we have now is what bothers me. And I know the end game of this is. Do you know what Lambda is, Ike? You know Lambda, right?
Yep. I do.
That is, once they can accept
that?
that,
What is that? What is
it's
Lamla?
pretty much man boy love. They want, the whole goal is the one.
Oh yeah. Oh
Word.
yeah.
So once somebody can claim that they are any gender, any race, they can also claim that any age. And if I can claim I'm 15, then it's okay to do things with a 15-year-old. You get the point? So that's the whole thing. It's just fluidity across board, not just gender only, but race, age, and you just go from there, and everything is modeled up.
Yeah, so it's a spirit of again, just as we're characterizing and adding features to, and perhaps that person we described who just graduated from Harvard and now is writing some stuff, clerking for some senator somewhere, writing some stuff, blah blah blah. They might not know that they're under the control of this particular spirit, but the spirit is one of complete rebellion against any limits. Right now, being a fellow shaman, I get it, because I like the chaos after all, right? And so on and so on and so forth. However, I also live in reality, and reality has forms, and the form of recognizing outliers is one thing, but trying to make the outlier the norm is completely destroying the entity itself.
Yeah.
In this case, a human population bell curve distribution. Yes, they're outliers, and if there's a person out there who is completely outside and they don't regard rules, I 100% get it, because I will tell you any day that I'm also one of those type of people, intellectually, spiritually, but I'm not stupid. Hence the thing about Kaiser was talking about wisdom also. I also understand that this body polity called the human thing is not made of outliers, okay? It is made of normies, regular people. To try to then take the outlier and shift it to the center by force because of some kind of crazy, again, I'm calling it some kind of crazy spirit it's anarchy, right? It's let me turn things on their head. There's even also a sense in which Christianity is of that sort too. Christianity, says, the rich man is bad just because he's bad. I'm not saying that's really Christianity. I'm saying the ways in which people typically kind of interpret Christianity is a very anarchist type of move, right? Christianity, after all, is here to overturn Rome, right? And such and such. Unfortunately, it became Rome eventually. But that spirit is what motivates, is the motivating principle behind the blob at the end of the day, obviously then leading to NAMBLA and all those other kinds of things, right? But you have to really understand and then see where the viable targets are, right? Not, if we're making sense, IC3 and BT. Like,
Right. No, with you, but let me take a different angle here. You know how I'm a big comic movie guy, and I used to get mad and I'm like, why are we doing this DI inclusivity and all this gender fluidity? Then I found out that the DI, what's it called? They have this score thing that you have to measure up to, and so they have to force inclusivity in everything just to. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to fight against this, and I'm going to watch the movie. Then it turns out all this BlackRock and stuff are funding all these companies. They have shares in them, so they don't really. It isn't about money for them. They will always fund them to promote whatever they. So how do you fight those large investors, that can afford to waste billions of dollars just to promote what they believe? How do you do that, Ike? Because I know you talk about going to schools and fighting. I get that, but what about those machines? Because somebody's making a push behind the scenes and they have the money. So how do you fight that?
This is a big question, and I think, like the way you mentioned legitimacy. I think I was saying this. Legitimacy is the foundation of the world, of a world, in the construction of a world. You got to get the legitimacy to get the moral high ground, and then everything can build from there. You can build your market, you can build your world. Everything operates from that foundation. That's why they had, for so many, Rome became, as you said, Christianized, and then the Pope. You see, so the Pope, everything, the whole idea of legitimacy is going to be signed off by the one. the entire legal system, moral system, the concept of trust, all has to have a legitimacy. And they're saying that uh, African African values, the African way of thinking, um, is illegitimate. It's not legitimate. It's or it's no longer legitimate. So therefore, the whole of Africa and African people and African diaspora are the outliers. So
So it's
how do you?
interesting. Something just came to mind here because okay, so there's this um, there's this battle. Let's say it's right here in the West, which we've been describing of right there of taking down the legitimacy of this particular blob. But then there is a question of going into Africa and sparking and demonstrating to the masses, or somehow doing this elite to elite clash, the illegitimacy of the particular ruling elite there, right? Which either these things need to happen simultaneously, or perhaps one needs to happen before the other, vis-a-vis the if Africa is your concern, let's say, right? You might leave Harvard alone, and you might decide to go in there and demonstrate the illegitimacy of a particular African set of elites and what they're doing and such. Now, and we were talking about this earlier when me and BT were talking about why there's certain people who don't go into Africa to quote unquote invest. And invest in this case really means taking power, right? Getting things right, because things are in freaking chaos there. And the reason they don't go there, and these are diaspora type people, people who are from Africa, but they leave and they go do stuff elsewhere, is because of the illegitimate elite as a result of what I tend to, what I'm calling like a overpopulation of elites, overproliferation of elites, surplus elites. In other words, elites, people who feel a claim to power, but the system cannot support their claims. The system cannot give them the lifestyles or the whatever and the legitimacy that they seek, right? Hence, it's just a chaos place. Given my proclivities towards chaos, I think that it's probably easier to go indirectly, circumvent and go indirectly and hit like an African target, let's say, like Nigeria or something like that, and flip that thing to a more sane kind of approach with, again, the approach of that kind of monarch that I talked about, right? Because it has to be an individual. It's not going to be some kind of, people talk about mindset change, but mindsets change when power changes. The Japanese all of a sudden became very, they were okay with being ruled by the Americans for a little bit after they got their heads knocked a little bit, right? All overnight. It wasn't like, oh, the samurai, they will continue to fight until the last man and there'll be insurrection after insurrection. It's like, no, if you actually do grab a hold, and and just by the way, the difference between what America did in Japan and the way it kind of administered Japan and Germany afterwards versus what it does now is that America doesn't actually grab a full hold of the thing now. They drop a few bombs and they start saying a couple of things and they do this and they kind of blah blah blah. We're going to train the Afghans and blah blah blah, and then they leave and everything falls apart, right? They don't actually go in there with the hand of a monarch and grab that thing, because once you grab that thing, it will succumb, it will change. And doing that in Africa, way more chaotic, way more, but I don't think it's any less difficult or any less necessary than also doing it at the top. You might say
Yes.
IC3A, but it's still in a prison. How can you go in there? But I disagree. I think that there are ways of, if you can cut off, right? If you do it correctly, the prison becomes irrelevant. In other words, the
Yes.
big prison system becomes irrelevant. And now you're like, oh crap, we're here in this land. Look, that guy is completely illegitimate. I have legitimacy. Here I am with a better story, better elite, attracting better people, and I've solved X, Y, and Z problems, which needs to be, again, the actual bread that you're giving to them. I think it can be done that way as well.
Yes, yeah, the dominating, creating the new narrative of so the correct narrative then, or the solution narrative, whatever that is, when it's found, will somehow be able to achieve a bloodless coup, a bloodless coup in terms for Africa, but yet also, so you're attacking the African bloodless coup, and at the same time you're attacking the Havard, or the elites. So it's two at the same time. Is that what you're
Exactly,
saying?
because if that happens, then it is necessarily challenging the legitimacy of the higher ups, of the Western elites, right? Um,
So, what do you think about? Is it Joseph Prince talking about taking over Africa? Because you mentioned coup. I mean,
I,
is that
I
falls in
didn't
line with
mention cool. Maybe it
Ah,
might be
I'm
inferred.
only asking the question. I see that you brought it up. I'm like, you said cool or something. I'm like, okay. So, do you want the white
Okay.
people taking it over since you cannot govern yourselves?
Um, Mr. Prince is correct in his observations. I'm sure we all agree about the s-hole nature of things, right? Right. So he's making a correct observation. He may be a little bit One may want to ask, like, okay, how did it get to that point, right? And if you take a case study, let's say of Nigeria, right? How is it when it was under colonial blah blah blah? Is it just that, oh, the English just didn't do it correctly, which we're saying yes, yes, it did not leave correctly. But by the way, the English ruled very well. They perfected governance, by the way. But then when they left it in a situation specifically for it to be ungovernable and messed up, so that they can still have the control and access, right? So is he saying, oh, well, if the new Western colonization comes in, we will do it right for Africa, right? And in a benevolent way and such and such. And perhaps even in the manner I was saying that, United States did with Japan, where it actually really did grab a hold of it and govern it and then make sure that it left certain institutions, blah, 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 right? I don't think that it is tenable in terms of, I think that he's kind of lashing out, saying it should be colonized, recolonized, which is the kind of thing you also hear on this channel. I may even say it. Kaiser definitely says it from time to time. It's coming from the same place of understanding that, look, something needs to be done, right? Something needs to be done. And pretending like the issue is not there, pretending like the problem is not there, and talking about, oh, we just have to unite or some other kind of BS. No, it needs to be an action by a unit, something that has a plan, right? And again, this is my bias. I just have that
right.
bias towards an individual, call it king, call it monarch, call it something that comes in there and shows the illegitimacy of the other side using the techniques that we've been discussing.
Yes, definitely. So therefore, it's this maneuver is like it has to be such precise level of social engineering, unseen, unprecedented, because going for that grab, as it were, that grab is such a precise operation. One flaw, it's just total chaos and bloodshed all over. It's the highest science. Social science is the highest science. It really is.
Oh, okay. Well, you have a. I'm not gonna come for you. That's Kaiser's job to do that. All right.
So what did you say?
Um,
What did you say?
I'm not gonna attack you in that regard. That's Kaiser's job to do that. But if I may, I would have to disagree that.
Okay, how you can disagree? Go on, man. Let's hear.
No, I think it's way more chaos than this precision you describe. It is not a physics experiment. It is it is power, you know, and i- if you get the sense in which I'm saying, and there's several ways of doing this power thing, none of which is clean and neat. Okay.
Oh,
If,
go on
if
then.
we look at
I'm going to
the
challenge you. Go
most
on, go on.
common one, if we look at the most common one, which is just
Yeah.
war, that is the least clean and neat thing, because once it starts, all kinds of asymmetries and, shall we say, second order effects and things you did not anticipate, as every general knows, once you start, blah blah blah. So it's rather chaotic, right? And the order that you actually are able to create and sustain is informed by the all the chaos and all the bending. And in other words, you're making it. You have an analogy of, like, it's like a rocket. Okay, I'm going to the moon. I'm going to have the precise system of rockets. So this particular engine burns off, and then the next one, and the next one, with the right precise amount of fuel, and it's targeted in the right way, and boom, I launch. I'm saying no. It's more like driving, with many twists, turns, decisions that you're making on the fly, roadblocks that you did not anticipate, detours, this, that, and the other, to get to the moon. Um, I'm not. Perhaps somebody says it's just it's a quibble about detail, but I think. I mean, it's just a way of describing the same difference at which we always come to in terms of me versus you. But I see things more as driving, and again, maybe it's, I think we know why it is, but you're trying to shoot a rocket after making precise calculations, and you get one shot, boom. I'm like, no, we're gonna get in the car, and then we're gonna start driving, and then we're gonna see what happens.
Okay, but okay. So you see, this chaos and power, yeah, power and chaos. It's almost very related, but you build an engine to direct the power. So the engine is precise. The power and chaos is just there. It's just power. But it's all about how you direct that power and your ability to direct that power through the narrative, or physically through the building of the engine. So it always boils back down to precision, because chaos has got nothing to do with it's just out there. Power's just
Yeah.
out there. So how
So
how do you
let,
harness
let
that
me,
power?
yeah, let me
And I want
then.
to say, even the military, they've got to get intelligence, yeah,
100%,
intelligence on the
100%.
map.
Let me agree
Go on.
with you based on what we've been saying so far, because we've not been just talking nonsense so far, or at least I try not to. Right? In other words, I've not been just hollering and from the left and right about feelings and wishes. Oh, this should happen and this should happen. It's like, no. We say, okay, what is the nature of the task? What is the nature of the obstacles? What is the nature of the enemy? And what are some features? And we've gone deep into those particular features. So, insofar as you're understanding this particular thing, yes, that's the thing you're going to target. Hence, it's going to need to be precise, right?
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
just telling you that, look, bro, if you look at history, things never happened the way you thought they were going to happen, right? Nobody thought the Soviet Union was just going to collapse bloodlessly, right? In just kind of crumble under its weight. And a thousand other things I can kind of describe, whereby somebody thought it was going to be one way and planned it this way, and boom, who knows how it happened. Therefore, as a result, I'm not against having this knowledge and intelligence and understanding and gathering of information and reconnaissance. 100%. It's just a difference in, I'm just more prepared for the failures ahead. It seems to be the case that, I understand that it's a game of iteration and a game of unexpected crap. And perhaps as a result, I tend to be, I'm more willing to even start first before, some other types who may be looking for the precise formula, right? Um, if that makes sense.
yeah. I think I can agree with you in terms of the driving. I think. What do you think of this? That um, from a precise base, yes, then they launch out into the chaos in steps. Yeah. So tolerance. I think in engineering, everything has a certain amount of tolerance. No matter how fine the engineering, there's still tolerances. So how in a military operation they have a base, they establish a base, yes, and then from that base they send out reconnaissance. Yeah, and it's the same kind of thing if the SWAT team or the military are doing a raid on a raid on a town or a building. It start a base and then they say, right, start clearing. Check. Is that room clear? Clear. Yeah. Check. Okay. Move on. So even the way you handle a territory, um, it's it's precise engineering, but the driving, I think how it relates to your driving is that it's in steps because you never really know fully what's all the way down, but you've got to secure the area before you make another step. So, and that
100%.
secure is to do with precision. It's got to be absolute. You're moving into the chaos in absolute steps.
Yeah, and by the way, uh, as is also relevant to the question that you asked about somebody focusing on production and another person focusing on supply chain. I think that when you asked that, as a matter of fact, I was like, "Oh, IC3. That's interesting. You've you're being I don't mean to patronize you, but it's like, oh, you're modifying your approaches based on your interactions over time here, meaning it takes different types, right? And the berserker who's just gonna start, right? And berserker make it seem like it's all completely dumb, but the person like me who understands that, look, man, um, all the things I do, as I tend to be involved in entrepreneurial stuff, it never happens the way I thought it was gonna happen. But I do succeed though, right? I do succeed, and it's not like it's complete chaos in terms of my me, right? I'm the one bringing the order, but what I find is I'm interacting mainly with chaos, right? So I'm just gonna go in there and boom, boom, boom. But there's a I don't do it alone, right? There are people like Kaizo, for example, whom you know are actually more like you in terms of that logic thing, right? Um, and they have, he has his own approaches and ways of doing things, and I understand that I need these types of people. Okay, I need these types of people. Um, there are people like me also with regards to some other set of parameters, which are more tend to be more that laser focused, right? And it's like laser focused. I'm going to do this one thing, right? And then there are people also like Kaizo with regards to another parameter who tends to kind of jump from one thing. They're looking, they're kind of like scanning, hopping left, right, left, right, left, right, da 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 da, right? Which is also similar to you. I need this hop right, left, right person as much as he also needs me, because what tends to be like, I create a channel for them, and then they go and they clear that channel with their scanning and all that kind of stuff. But if I don't create that channel and say, here's where we're going, they tend to dissipate their energy going all over the galaxy, right? That kind of a thing. So
Okay.
I understand fully well that these things that need all to work together. All right. I'm me, and I like to go for it, and I like to understand. Hey, I'm gonna trial and error, right, and so on and so forth. But 100%, I understand the need for those whom are differently tuned.
And do you think the African leadership um, they can see the encroachment, the attempted encroachment, an attack on African values? Um, I wonder how they're. I suppose they're having the same conversations that we're having here. How to effectively uh, stave off
If
this
they're having it, we're
blob.
not hearing it. Never underestimate the incompetence of or if they're having these conversations, we're not hearing it, right? And I would not be surprised if these people really are just the typical African care only for what's in front of them, and care about in a rather individualistic way. Um, and when I say individualistic, I'm like, because I believe in individualism, but I believe in individualism with a grand plan, right? An individual with a grand plan, as opposed to someone who's just myopically trying to gather the nuts or the crumbs from the table. And that's what I tend to see with these Africans is, someone grabbing nuts from the table of the powers that be, and those whom perhaps even are in the realm of politics fighting against the current elites, or doing so maybe just from a place of demagoguery and populism and such and such. And then, generally speaking, the organization and the long play is not something that see that Africans have, and it's not like it's widespread in any population. It's just that there's some populations whom are better at getting a game plan, and actually a rather sophisticated game plan with a rather sophisticated understanding, and then having staying power. It seems to me like if an African group has these ideas and discusses, it'll last for 6 months until the next show comes in town or whomever and clears everything up, and now everyone is fighting for the corrupt dollars that got sprinkled in the air, and how they're going to raid the central bank or whatever so they can get their money in Switzerland or some other crap like that. There doesn't seem to be like a long staying power with regards to plans like this. If there is, I haven't seen it.
Right. So would you? Because the one moment Mo kind of disagreed with me on this, but I see it's scalable. So if whatever principle or model or format one can use to get a group of gangs to come together and achieve some stability, that principle or format is also scalable to clans and tribes. So I see gangs, tribes, clans, and nations operating under the same principle. So a successful African union, a true African union, that allows for internal business, would have a product or an ideological product that you could sell to all the tribes to make them see the benefit of them all working together. And that plan would be the same thing if it was just a bunch of gangs, a group of gangs. And I think it would be the same principle if you had a number of individuals that you had to get together to work on a project. Why I'm saying that social science is the higher science, because you can't organize the people to come together to a certain place. They can't produce something. Yes? So if you can organize a group of individuals to produce something, you that same principle can be applied to gangs, to nations, and all the way up.
In principle, yes. And then the devil is in the details and the particulars, especially if you're saying, hey, I need to, in this case, maybe organize people with a certain amount of wisdom, or maybe I need to organize the rabble, or maybe I need to organize such and such, right? So the principles will differ depending on the types of people you're trying to organize. And then there comes the question of the availability of the types that you're looking for, right? Again, I'm saying I haven't seen these types. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know where they are. I don't know what they're saying. Most people just tend to be saying the same old, right? And without much vision or wisdom or whatever. Now, this does not take away from your point, because your point is still very much in line with our point, with the point we've made earlier, which is you need to have something part of my formula at least, is you have that thing which works, right? Which, as I said, is not bad news, it's good news, because you have something to work with, right? There are problems that you can solve. And when you solve it, now you're going to get these individuals or gangs or whatever on your side, albeit temporarily, though, as I'm sure you know that it's not a permanent alliance you're going to
That's
have,
right. Yeah.
right? So, but at least with those initial steps, maybe that's your first camp you're going to build with this precision things you're talking about, right?
Task
Would be
force.
exactly what are these? What is the first kind of thing? Bawati talked about like import, export, blah blah blah, and we'll find a way of breaking that. And it tends to be one of the easiest ways. And I don't have any particular programs or thoughts right now. I'm just saying technology tends to be one of the easiest ways to go and solve a problem. And technology doesn't have to be, some kind of fancy computer tech or some kind of fancy nuclear weapon or fission energy, blah, blah, blah. Just be a different modality of doing things, a different way of doing things, some new thing using old tools maybe that you used to solve, the transportation problem or the whatever problem that it is. That gives you legitimacy, gives you support, it gives you a lot to work with, and it gives you a time period where you can have some semblance of allyship and such and such, right? So I do agree with you. The formula does hold. Um, One man, I'm not surprised one man disagreed with you, because one man loves to point out things that. Anyways, let me not go come from one man. I tend to be a resolver of things. I can see everything in everything. There's nothing you will tell me that I'm going to be like, no. I'll just say yes, and here's the further complication. Here's a further aspect. Here's a further consideration.
100%. 100%. Okay, so it's interesting that was going through discussing the value chain and analyzing not just the beginning of the value chain, but the end, and how you said that the end of the value chain ends up in a meme, and then that's where it moves into culture, and then moves into values and spirit, perhaps spirituality as well, because it becomes intelligent. Would you agree it becomes more intangible at the end of the value chain? The value chain is something that moves from the ground into the heavens, as it were.
um, it's interesting that you say that. And again, since I'm about to be, because I'm going to need to bounce here, and it'll be good to wrap up on an esoteric note as well.
Yes.
Came back to this particular question here. Um, yes, yes, in a general sense, right? So you're doing something, but also you're creating a notion of value, a notion of desire, right? In quote unquote in heaven, which is planted in the nature of the animal that you're trying to influence. The animal in this case is a monkey, that primate, if you will, that likes to ape. To ape means to copy, right? And we are the best apes. We're the best copiers. We're actually